everybody. So this is our second live stream that we've done. Hopefully you like that little intro that I made. It took a little while to do that. Before we get started, if you notice anything about either our audio quality or the video quality, please let us know in the chat. We will be looking at that, and I'll make any adjustments that I can while we're doing the live stream. Other than that, I guess it's off to you.
Well, it's been about 8 months since our very first live stream, and the gap was not designed for any other reason other than there's just two of us and we're very busy. And we've been working on a lot of project-based videos, and this has always been sort of, we got to get back to that. We got to get back to that.
Hold on. Before you continue,
Sure.
some people are saying the audio is too low, so we're too quiet. We could turn this up. Let me see if this does anything for anybody.
All right, so can you hear me a little bit better now?
Is that better?
Hopefully. Give us some feedback if it turns out that that did improve things or you want a little bit more of that. The primary reason we decided to get into doing live streams was because, as I've said at the end of almost all of our videos, I really enjoy reading the comments. I read every single one that comes through, and I respond to as many as I can in order to answer questions, take suggestions about new videos, and just generally cover topics that may be tangential to the main topic that we covered in the video. But it's a one-on-one, and the opportunity to be able to talk to a wide range of people in real time and get feedback allows me not only to be able to distribute the information more efficiently, but also gives you the opportunity to see other people's comments and other people's feedback so that there can be interaction at all levels. The other thing that we would like to do is, one of the major problems that we've seen in the development of YouTube over the last 15 years, we've been doing this for 11 years now, has been that a large number of genres have developed podcasts, political podcasts, sports podcasts, gaming podcasts, and they seem to be very well received and they've become very popular. But there isn't a lot in the science, engineering, and technology field. You may occasionally have some disaster and a bunch of creators will come online and discuss an event like, say, the submarine crash or the Maui fires, that sort of thing. But just a routine going through what's going on with modern technology, there really isn't anything out there. So beyond our communication here and being able to broadcast it more broadly than, say, in the comment section, we also intend to have guests, and guests that are covering the same sort of content that we do here, but people that might be interesting for us to interact with real time, as well as the opportunity for you to maybe ask questions where you could get two takes on the same topic. So not only have I made up a list of some of the people that we're thinking of trying to get in contact with and presenting this to, but you may have some suggestions too, people that you follow avidly and regularly that have been around for a while that you think might be a neat interaction in this sort of a format. Put them in the comment section. We're going to read through those, and potentially we may reach out to those people in addition to some of the other content creators that we've come up with. So one of the comments that was brought up by a viewer a month or so ago saying a great way to pick topics that you might be able to cover is to go into more detail, some of the background detail, on some of our recent videos, things that maybe we went through too fast or you maybe want to revisit. The recent video that we did with the hot sauce.
That was a fun one.
Oh, yeah, in a way it was.
Yep.
The jet engines, the AI-directed laser systems that we've been working on. If you have some questions about that or you want to make some comments, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. One of the interesting things that we had a lot of responses to was after you had the hot sauce and you survived the initial attack, how did you feel later that night and the next day?
Okay, wait. Yeah, what was the comment exactly? Do you remember?
I
didn't see it.
There were hundreds of people saying, oh, I can't wait to find out what happened to you next day.
In the bathroom?
In the bathroom, yeah.
And I didn't actually notice that much about it, but I had to say the worst one was probably the bomb. Even though yours was way hotter, the bomb lasted longer. I don't
Ah,
know for what reason, but like I couldn't get it out of my mouth. That's why I was like chugging the chocolate milk and everything, and
well,
ice cream and everything. I couldn't get over it.
well, that
But
was what was also funny to me is that my biggest after effect was I felt so bloated because
I felt that too because you drank so much milk, and I did
and
too.
ice cream and
Yeah, yeah,
milk,
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah,
to mention the wings and everything else you had.
yeah,
So
yeah,
when I was
yeah.
all done, man, I felt like I had had, a 12-course dinner, and at the same time, my mouth was on fire. So it,
Yeah, that's
it
good.
was it was a bit of an unpleasant evening, but we had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, that was really fun. Let me see if I can get some comments up. Well, yeah, actually, before I get to any of your generic comments, because I haven't been looking too closely, I've been trying to pay attention to our stream. We did get a one super chat from Benjamin Force. Source? I don't know how to pronounce her name,
Sorry.
but well, obviously you paid in euros, and we're not in the European Union. But you said, actually, it'd be great if I could. You just said thank you for our seriousness about science and everything. We do appreciate like the patronage and everything, but we'd actually prefer like if you had a comment or something you want us to answer, so you're not just like donating to us. Like we're happy to answer questions. So if you want to put another question in here about any of our previous videos or future videos, we'd be happy to answer that.
Right. Just just to really nail this home,
Sure.
we're not doing this to make a buck.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
As I've said in some of the earlier videos, all of the money that we generate through ad revenue, through Patreon, goes right back into the channel. So if we made a fortune doing live streams, they would just go back into the channel, and we'd probably get another camera and we'd get fancier equipment.
Right.
So it's helpful, no question about that. And it does allow us, at least for the time being and hopefully for the foreseeable future, to stay away from adding sponsors.
Yeah, and what actually can I mention something about that? Unless we have a comment in here that I have to talk about. But yeah, sponsorships. We're never going to do sponsorships. I don't want to unless Dom wants to for whatever reason, but I highly doubt he wants to. I would never do sponsorships because the, I don't. I watch YouTube regularly, and I assume most of you guys watching this stream watch YouTube regularly. But you never like when you're watching a video and it's really getting into it, and then let me somehow sidetail this thing into, hey, do you want to see that my computer company, or hey, do you want to
Right.
see Raid Shadow Legends or something? It's like no one wants that, and it might make the creator some extra money, but it really takes away from the actual video because when you skip, you might miss some good stuff in the actual video if you skip too far. So we're never going to do that. It even if we could benefit from it like monetarily, it's not worth it. So we're never going to do that, but we do rely on you guys on like just subscribing, watching the videos, maybe Patreon, but you don't have to do that. We don't feel bad if you don't subscribe on Patreon or anything like that.
And and to balance that,
Yeah.
I do understand why you probably noticed the same thing. 5 years ago, it was pretty unusual to see a sponsorship from a host. The ad revenue on YouTube has substantially decreased over the last few years. The number of viewers you get and the number of watch minutes you get are often reflected in how many ads they can stick into the video, and therefore that determined your ad income. I think because YouTube is maturing, there's a lot more competition out there. A lot of the channels are getting quite good, and they're very interesting to watch. But it also means that there's just so much ad revenue to go around, and it's been decreasing. And if you've got channel creators like us that are somewhat dependent on the income, you can see why they may be reaching out to try to find another method in order to be able to generate some additional income. It's not greed, it's more like survival. So I do understand why, even if our general sense about how people feel about the sponsorships is true, even if most people agree with that. Yeah, I can understand why some content creators just feel that they need to do that. And so I'm not going to criticize somebody for having made that choice. It's just that I don't think that choice works for us. And at least at this point, and hopefully never, will
Yep.
be necessary for us to go there, because I do think it is a bit of a hassle.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just saw a comment that's saying lighting is poor on your dad. Yeah, of course. If we could have like some like cameras like in the back of us so you could see our lighting setup, we actually spent a really a really long time setting up studio lights all around here with the extreme LEDs. And if you've seen any of the videos that you have done in the barn with all of those LED overhead lights, where it looks good but the background isn't perfect, I we've noticed that here with too much lighting we look like ghosts, and I might still look like a ghost. Certain camera angles look like ghosts. But we've done the best that we can. So if there's anything that you can recommend about, like, oh, maybe you could change something about the setup. But we've done the best that we can. We even opened a side door that we have here to be able to get the lighting a little bit better, and we have lighting all the way in the back of the warehouse, if you can see that, to make the lighting a bit better. So forgive us for the amateur nature, but this is our second live stream, and hopefully it's quite a bit better than our first one. But
Right.
we're still improving.
Yeah, everything is going to be a learning experience, so
Yep.
we don't take it as a criticism, we'll take it as a suggestion,
Yep.
as long as you use polite language.
Yep.
Now, the other things that we've done recently is the series on both the AI-directed lasers and the jet engines. And one of the sort of debates you have to sort of resolve is when you do a video that is as large scale, big, time consuming, relatively expensive to do, like, say, a jet engine or building an AI directed laser, in order to cover that in enough detail that people can really pick some useful information out of that, you really can't cover the entire topic in less than 3 hours. It's just, I don't think I could stand there that long. But in addition, it becomes just tedious. It's too much like watching an educational lecture rather than something that's fun and attracts the audience. So what we've done is frequently we've broken those videos up into reasonable chapters so that each one would cover a different aspect and it would sort of move toward a conclusion. And in some cases, we even revisit something a couple of years later. I'll give you an example. About a year ago, we did a video on emissive paints. Nighthawk and Light had first introduced me to this idea of using paint that has such a high infrared emissivity and such a very, very high visible reflectivity that under a clear sky, the paint is actually able to dump more heat into the sky, into the clear sky, and eventually into space than it accumulates from the surrounding air. And the air and the paint temperature actually drops below ambient air temperature, which seems thermodynamically impossible, but it isn't. If you've got a way to cool something off, if you can get rid of the heat into space, you can literally cool off surfaces to below ambient temperature. A lot of potential applications for paints like this for cooling purposes that don't involve using CFCs, don't involve using energy, and can be applied as a paint or a coating to a surface of a building, a house, a roof. Well, number of questions came up. Okay, yeah, it works fine on your test sample the day after you painted it, but what happens after it's been outdoors for a year or two? Well, we took several of the samples that we produced and actually hung them on the outside of this warehouse about 14 or 15 months ago. And we allowed them to age. They're at about a 20-degree angle, so they get rain, dust, leaves, bugs, all kinds of abuse. And in the near future, we're going to retest them. It'll be a short video, but we're going to see how they compare to the virgin paint and to a regular commercial high-gloss white paint, to see if this material and this sort of process isn't something just for the laboratory, but can also be used in the field. So that's how we sometimes will come around, circle back to a project that may have seemed relatively complete at the time. While other projects, like with the lasers and the jet engines, what we end up doing is trying to get through the chapters to the end of the story and hopefully round everything out. And that's kind of the mixture of the different ways that we handle the videos. We could also do shorts, short little videos that kind of capture some interesting thing, faux pas that we make when we're doing videos, and we may produce some of those, but not in replacement for the major project videos, which is the heart of the channel and the most fun, to get really deep into a subject and get the answers to it. So anyway, that's kind of why we do things and break things up. But clearly, we haven't visited the laser videos for what now, a couple of months since we cooked the hamburger.
Yeah, that was the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, in order to move beyond that, we have found that some of the skill sets are beyond the skills of Alex, his brother Paul, who's a high-tech sort of guy and very busy, and myself. We're going to see if we can collaborate with a local university to see if we can get some of their expertise to help us with some of the computer, the robotics, the necessary functions. And when we do that, then we're going to go back to that project with the more powerful, more sophisticated laser and several other videos. So that's sort of where the plans are going forward with respect to that.
Yeah, well, let me interrupt you because I had two questions for you. One was not a super chat, but I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure if everybody will find it interesting, but Will asked, have you fully recovered from your fireworks eye injury? Yeah.
The answer in court, no. Practically, yes. When I say in court, the thing is, the answer is yes or no. Well, no. But does it mean it matter? No. I still have a little bit of ocular paralysis. In other words, if you look at my eyes in the light, they have a slightly different pupil size. And when I shine a bright light or I look at the sun, it will constrict just like it's supposed to. But the right eye, this is the eye that was injured, doesn't constrict as much. I don't really notice it when I'm driving or when I'm doing anything other than shaving and looking in the mirror. But no, I didn't completely recover, but I can't tell the difference.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good one. Secondly, we got a super chat for $10 from Corey Newton.
Okay.
And he asked, I would be interested in seeing a video about underwater sonar, a fishing sonar or something. Would you ever do any sort of, and actually I have a good response to this, but I want him to go first before we get into that because he might not be excited about what I'm thinking of.
Well, one of the things we noticed when we got the boat was that it had a fish finder on it. And
it did,
but I don't think it was working right, or we didn't go through
hooked up with the batteries and everything. Yep.
But it did get us thinking, because part of the reason for buying the boat was not only just to have fun, but if you remember a couple of years ago, we did the Tesla-powered or Tesla battery-powered catamaran. And we ended up using a friend's cabin and boat in order to be able to do the filming of that boat. So it worked. It was lucky that we found the right location, the right people. But one of the things that we have always expressed some interest in, just like with our drone videos that we covered a few years ago, is ROVs, remotely operated vehicles that are water-based, are intriguing. You don't really see a lot. There are some. You can buy them. But they are often very expensive and very specialty-based. And in order to be able to use those, other than just tying a wire to them, and they're not really very remote, they're sort of, somewhat remote, to be able to have something that could use fairly simple sonar avoidance, like many modern air-based robotic systems have, that would be something that I would be interested in doing. I'm not interested in trying to build, something from, for military purposes, or trying to build something that uses phased arrays or the kind of sophisticated stuff that they're doing in the military. But to be able to use sonar with a boat and an ROV and using the vehicle that we've got behind us in order to be able to act as the platform, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry guys. I'm having a little bit of a tough time trying to, because we've gotten a few super chats here and I'm new to this, so it's hard to save everything that I get without interrupting him.
You got a new one? Interrupt me and let's keep going and maybe we can.
Yeah, well, yeah, but also they deserve long responses. Okay, so let's start with the one that's about to run out, but I understand. I can't pronounce your name. Ole. How would you pronounce that? Sorry, OL, and then ALDIC.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't want to mess it up.
No, I understand.
But give me the
I
content.
don't want to ruin your butcher your name and everything. But we have a few here. So greetings from Norway. Some funding for equipment here. What about more videos on energy storage in residential settings? Salt batteries could be a technology that deserves more attention. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sort of like the Tesla wall
stuff.
Yeah. Matt Farrell on Undecided. He's actually, I think he's a New Englander like we are. Has a very excellent channel on green energy, alternative energy. I think he's even installed some of this stuff in his house. It's a great channel. I would definitely go to see him about that. In terms of the more sort of exotic energy storage, sand batteries, large water-containing batteries, thermal storage with water. I think that does have some potential applications, but what we would probably do is study the engineering and the physics of the underlying process rather than, say, reviewing equipment like he does on his channel, reviewing equipment that may be available for you to purchase. I think that would be a better match. And so we could get into how much sand would you need? How much water would you need? How would you heat it? How would you extract the heat? Yeah, it is a very interesting idea. And just like with our solar videos, with our campfire generator, we're into alternative sources of energy by looking at a problem and saying, is there another way to approach this rather than just focusing down the way everybody else is, thinking outside the envelope.
Yeah, even if it can be like less efficient or anything, it's always fun to test. So like with the campfire generator, that's a really good one because it's not very practical, but it's a fun thing to test. Like, can it be done?
Right.
And if you have the equipment, you can do it. It's just, do you want to invest the time, space, and money to be able to do it?
And part of the argument is, even if it isn't practical, if what you can do is you can show that it's possible, somebody smarter than us or with more experience in the area might say, wow, yeah, it actually does work in theory, but you know what they should have done? And then they can take it from there. So if we just, get the ball rolling.
Right. And I do actually have a few people here, and I figured out how to...
Okay, good.
I'm dumb. Just forgive me. I'm done with this. I don't know how this exactly works, but I can scroll back up, surprisingly.
Trust me, if we changed chairs, it would be much worse.
I'd hope so. If it didn't, why am I here?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So we got got a super chat, $5 from Francis Corsur. I am sorry, I'm butchering your names, guys. It's like, if your name is Smith, I'll probably get it right.
Probably.
Okay, so his question is for $5 is video ideas with research papers, heat pump expansion valve replaced with a generator expander, turbo expander, make it a battery, maybe Na sodium based.
Okay. The one suggestion you gave in there is the one that actually has intrigued me for a long time. I don't know if you know how, with the Joule-Thomson effect, liquid air is manufactured. But if you compress a gas, like air, to a very high pressure and then allow that very hot compressed air to cool off to room temperature, let's say just through a radiator or just wait, then you allow it to expand through a valve, through an aperture, a limiting valve. As it expands, it cools, and you can reach very low temperatures. Typically, the way these work is that the cold gas that comes out of that nozzle is then allowed to flow back over a coil containing the high-pressure gas on its way down to that little limiting aperture, lowering the temperature of the gas even further before it expands. And eventually, you get to the point where the air liquefies on expansion. The problem is, this is a non-adiabatic expansion. It's not doing any work. You're just expanding the gas. In a large-scale liquid oxygen facility, what they will do is they will actually run that high-pressure gas through a turbine and extract work, which can be used to drive the compressors, which is wonderful, but it also is a far more effective way of cooling the gas. That is an application that I think could be very useful for heat pumps, residential, commercial cooling, and I don't think anybody does that. As far as I know, almost all expansion inside of these types of devices is just the simple, basic 100-year-old expansion of gas from one pressure to another. So, yeah, I think I might look into that, and thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah, okay. And we have another one. Also, well, before I even get into that one, in between those, I got, why are you wearing sunglasses inside? We have bright lights here, and also I naturally have bags under my eyes, so I don't prefer having my regular eyes be looked at, so thank you for that.
You do look really nice, though, without the beard.
Oh, yeah, my beard, before, the reason I didn't shave is because I was lazy, but but I thought it would look better. It didn't. I can't, I don't know how so many people, this is so off topic, but how so many people get, like, the perfect beard that, like, is on same level. I only grow it right here, so I look like a homeless person. All right, so let's
Probably
move
got
on.
it from me.
Well, you've never grown a beard, so
No,
maybe
but
that's the reason.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So next question, €6 from Benjamin Fons. I think I pronounced that right. Would you rather spend $5,000 on equipment or on a course/training? And what would it be? So I'm guessing he's sort of asking, would you rather buy a new device or something that's $5,000 or learn how to use a new device for $5,000, but you don't have it? I'm assuming that's what he means.
I think.
Sorry if the
There
mic
was a
wasn't-
philosophy back at IBM when they were sort of like the powerhouse of computing, and their CEO was asked, what is the biggest asset? Is it the software that you wrote? Is it the chips that you have access to? And they said, unequivocally, the people. The people makes the difference. If you have smart people and they're capable, all the rest of it will follow. So I'd actually say I'd rather spend the $5,000 to become better at something rather than just another piece of equipment and I'm limited to my existing set of skills.
And you don't know how to use it.
Or even if I knew how to use it. If I
Well-
could spend $5,000 to become, say, much better with software development or creating, circuit boards like Paul can do.
Right.
If I had the ability to just throw that stuff together, that would be more valuable than having that solution given to me because that's a one-time deal. So actually, I would pick the skill set.
True. Yeah, unless you already have the skill set. But obviously, the point is
Presumption
you
is
don't
you
have both. You don't have either. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's a good response. Okay. We have a few more.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Yeah. No. It is actually. I have to say for everybody before we get into these two, we were both a little bit nervous about like getting into this because we were thinking, are we not going to have enough to talk about, or we're going to mess up on something? So far, it's going well, and your questions are helping us out a lot.
They're excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we got one from Philip. Oh, Jesus. I can't do these names.
Speaking of skill
I can't,
sets.
I can't do these names. Philip Vecchio. Vecchio. Vecchio? Vecchio. Okay, Philip Vecchio or Vecchio. I'm so sorry if I butchered your name. Thank you so much for sending in.
Join the party.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Okay.
oh, yeah. Every single. Actually, maybe I should intentionally get everybody's name wrong so no one feels left out. Okay. So his question is: would you build a rigid framed airship, a drone? The plywood / glass composite would be good. Would be a good frame for lifting body H2 airship, even solar powered.
Yeah, actually, a couple things that I don't know if you any of you follow Nighthawk and Light. It's not his last video. I think it was the second to the last, where he was actually taking very, very thin plastic and taping it together into very long sausage-shaped balloons and staining the inside of them with smoke from a fire and using sunlight in order to heat the air inside of these balloons, and they rose almost as if they contained helium. It's pretty impressive. And one of the things that was intriguing about that is the fact that helium is very expensive. Its current price right now is about $1 per cubic foot at standard temperature and pressure. So that's not much. That lifts about, what is it? What would it be? 10 grams. I'm
Well,
trying to
don't
remember
ask
the
me.
density.
I have
I'm,
no
I'm
idea.
thinking, but
Yeah.
basically, you get a fair amount of lift from it, less from than you do from hydrogen. But hydrogen is obviously very flammable, and it has the risk that if you send a balloon up or you send up something with hydrogen in it, you're essentially sending up a BOMB. And if it hits a power line or gets into a tree, you could potentially cause some damage. So the helium is much safer. Hot air would be a very good choice, and it's intriguing to me because of a project that Alex is going to tell you about in a little bit.
And I'll tell you about it as soon as he's finished. Sorry.
But in terms of the rigid frame, one of the problems with the rigid frame is that you use it because you want a certain air shape, a lifting body, like say a wing shape or something. So you gain something that you can't gain with clever stitching of a balloon into sort of a, let's say, a paraglider wing shape or a modern wing. The weight disadvantage, though, is pretty extensive because of the scale. When you try to scale something down, just like an ant can lift 50 times its weight, but you scale it up to the size of a dog and it would collapse under its own weight. Same structure, but it's a scale factor. When you start to scale rigid components in such a structure, you can only make them so thin and so light. So that extra weight burden is probably rarely going to be advantageous for anything that a group like us could afford to build. We're not building the Hindenburg. And so I don't think rigid hull is the way to go. I think different lifting methods, like I said about the hot air, that's intriguing. And I think that is exciting. And potentially to be able to build a wing that could fly under its own buoyancy as well as its air shape could be a very advantageous alternative to a drone for long standoff distances and times.
And I can add to all of that because I one of the only like videos that I sort of prepared that Dahir wasn't preparing that I did on my own, but we still have some work to do on it. Is we're planning to have a hot air balloon lift up a camera, or it's really a weather balloon.
A helium balloon.
Helium. Yeah, it's not hydrogen. But
it's not hot air.
It's not a hot air balloon. It's a regular balloon, but with helium. But it's a tough structure that will probably go up to 100,000 feet before it explodes. And underneath it, supported by strings, will be holding a box with some GoPros and a few temperature reader monitors and a GPS unit on there, so we can see where it's going. If we lose connection during that, we'll probably gain it again once it comes down. And we're using a program, and actually, let me show you guys this, because that actually probably, in case you guys want to do this. So Strato Flights, and let me pull this right up. Display capture. Haven't done this yet. Strato Flights. Strato flights. If you use this app, they also sell a bunch of different like aeronautic products that you would be
Hardware,
able to
not
use.
just
Hardware.
the software.
Yeah, not just and the software is free. And I'm not sure the best way for you guys to see this. I haven't looked it up recently. But you can get a lot of the products that we would be using here. So some of the weather balloons, we didn't get it from this site. We got it on Amazon, but you would be able to get it from here. And you can also get data loggers
Yeah.
and GPS trackers and all this stuff that we will be using, but we got it from different locations. I do have to say, though, I probably should have gone with this site because they have everything in one-stop shop. We're
Right.
not sponsored by them, but I would prefer using that in the future. So what we're going to be doing with that is sending up a balloon, not where we are now. We're going to be sending it up in a different location, so you can't look down on the GoPro camera that we have and see where we are. We want to keep our location secret. But we'll have the GoPros running. We'll have an extra battery to keep them running because they run out of battery so quickly. And it's an insulated box, and we'll be launching that so you can see the curvature of the Earth, and then it'll come down at a certain location. Well, that the reason to have GPS is to make it a little bit more accurate, but we'll be using stratoflights to estimate the flight track of where it's going to be coming down. So we'll be able to drive there and then use the GPS to get a pinpoint address to be able to go and pick that up and recover the footage.
One of the things you didn't mention about that software, which I thought was like surprising to me when you showed it to me the first time,
Sure.
was the fact that it imports ongoing real-time updated wind data, so that as
Not from the balloon,
No.
but just weather based from any weather station that's around you. Yeah.
So then it enters that data into the program to identify the likely track of your balloon. So you can sort of anticipate kind of where it's going to go, and when you're getting ready to launch, that it's not going to end up, crashing in the middle of the Atlantic. One of the nice things about those weather balloons, it's sort of I just like things that are elegant, where they do two things at the same time for the same price. And that is, there are two types of balloons that are typically used for high altitude balloon experiments. One is a super pressure balloon. That's not this. And there are these types of balloons. The super pressure balloons sound like they're heavy duty. Really what they are is when you get up to these extremely high altitudes, the air pressure is minuscule, but it still exists. And the balloon, the latex balloon that we are using, will continue to expand until eventually it bursts. You don't need any kind of mission-ending device, something that's going to burst your balloon or cut your wires or anything like that. It will pop. And so therefore, you will just keep going up and up and up and up and up. The lighter your package, the smaller your balloon can be before it takes off. The more it can expand, the higher you will get. That's the trade-off. Super pressure balloons, when they reach that rarefied elevation, will stop expanding. They're strong enough to prevent themselves from continuing to expand, and they reach that final altitude. And except for thermal differences, night to day, they can stay up for approaching a year, orbit the planet. This is definitely not something you want when you want to recover your box that afternoon.
Yeah,
and so,
you don't want to have to travel 1,400 miles away or hope that the bottle finds someone else
on an island, yeah.
But there is an important point about this. If you are going to do this yourself, which I think that is a really good thing about this video, is it's very easy to do this yourself. As long as you can find a styrofoam box, we're going to be using a 3D printer that we just got, and I can tell you about that more later. But if you just want to get like some insulated box, you put some cameras in there, a backup battery, all that sort of stuff. If you have cameras, that's great. You don't have to spend money on GoPros or DJI cameras or anything to have in there. But the main thing that you have to be concerned about is you're going to lose it, potentially. You have to be willing to risk your cameras. And then also you have to notify the FAA if it's above a certain amount, and you still have to notify them with a basic sheet. But if it's above another
certain
amount,
weight, you mean?
weight, weight slash size, because
Density.
yeah, okay,
Right.
yeah, because it can't be hot. It can't be the size
Can't
of a
be a
hot air
ball
balloon.
bearing, even though it may be under the weight limit. You've got something that's potentially dangerous.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so just keep that in mind that the FAA will come into play. And with drones and everything, most people get away with just flying the little drones, even though you're supposed to register it. With this, you really do have to, so you don't get in trouble. Because
Right.
if a plane flies into it, helicopter flies into it, you're going to be liable for a lot of money.
Right. And you don't want anybody hurt.
Well, that too. Yeah.
You know, you don't want anybody
Oh,
hurt.
yeah, I forgot about
so
that.
projects that are sort of beyond what you're interested in investing in, we do those. And trying to do projects where, like the hot sauce, and I think with the balloon, these are things you can do. And maybe all we do is, stimulate the idea and give you a couple of pointers and things to watch out for. So that's part of what we're trying to mix with a lot of these videos. Am I missing any live?
We have a few chats, and I've been saving them.
Okay, give me one.
So, another one here is NH, New Hampshire, native here, which is fun. That's unlikely to happen. Moving back home soon. I'm a software engineer and an electrical engineer for medical x-ray systems, even used on Mythbusters. Hit me up if you want to get into that sort of equipment.
Well, I don't think we're going to need X-ray equipment, but that kind of background software, as well as the hardware that works with it, not just a desk jockey, but somebody who can handle a soldering iron. Yeah, we could definitely use that. We'll highlight that one. Thank you.
Well, even getting just in touch with them.
Yeah, I
that'd be
think
good.
we should.
Yeah, and that's Wild True Code.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay, we got someone from Russia. I can just tell by the name, and there's no way I can pronounce that. It's in Russian. Oh, well, you pronounce that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm not making fun of
our
Russians.
disability.
It's like,
It's not your name.
I can't read a different language. Okay. Anyways, so, and thank you for typing in English, by the way, because otherwise I'd have to translate it. So, are any of your projects truly innovative, or is it mostly demos of well-known technologies / ways to apply them? Asking not in diminishing way. Cheers.
I got it. I
Kinda
would
makes sense.
Yeah, I know exactly what he means. I would say innovative in only sort of the reapplication. So it's not like, for example, we just take a kit, we build it, and we show you that the thing works. Okay, yeah, that's not innovative. But for example, like with the thermal compounds that we made, that was pretty innovative. Came up with some knowledge about the different particle sizes and the different types of metals and solvents, such that what we produced, according to Linus, was as good or better than the world's best thermal interface material. And we weren't working from any formula. We were just working from the physics, the how do these things interact. And after just a few hundred iterations, came up with a successful compound. So yeah, there are things that we do that are truly innovative, but most of it, I think, is you'll read a research paper, somebody does something interesting, but doesn't pursue it. They just come up with an interesting fact. I think it was Two-Part Da Vinci just recently posted a video about the fact that apparently light can cause water to evaporate more quickly than thermally. In other words, they're able to cleave water molecules out of a container of water by using the photon energy, and it's far more efficient than trying to evaporate each water molecule alone. I went ahead and looked at the article that he had included in that video and thought this would be interesting if we could take this microscopic research that was done at MIT and scale it up to the point that we could actually demonstrate that it can be used for something interesting. The researchers claim that it could be used for, increasing drying and dehumidification. 20% of the world's energy industrial energy is used for drying substances. If this could save a few percent, this would be very useful. So I've got the lasers necessary to do this with and got a fog machine that's necessary for doing this. I'm looking into doing that right now. So that's not completely innovative, but I would say it's pretty darn cutting edge.
Yeah. Okay. So I have so many questions here. Sorry, I'm paying attention to this.
Yeah.
Sorry. So we have a super chat. Let me make sure I didn't miss any. Okay. So we have one from Joshua Rainstar. Got that one right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Public, I don't know, reply of research always positive. I'm not sure what that means. Could Tech Ingredients develop a less than $4,000 5 kilowatt Fresnel solar steam generator, a reflector controller, control logic motor turbine recycled, track the sun in only one axis?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's go for that.
Yes.
Maybe you should.
Yes, we could.
Maybe I'm getting
but
a little bit wrong.
your
but,
question
like,
is got a lot of layers to it.
Yeah.
If I was going to be doing any kind of heat concentrating, heat harvesting equipment, I would definitely go with reflectors, and I would stay away from the Fresnel, or Fresnel is the way to pronounce it.
Fresnel.
Fresnel lenses.
Okay.
Simply because dollars per square meter is lower in the reflectors, and potentially the Fresnel will also block some of the wavelengths that you might want to get through. With respect to the heat, though, the amount of heat that you need to accumulate in order to be able to get, say, water, if that's your working liquid, it doesn't have to be, but if it was, you have to get to some pretty high temperatures in order to get steam pressures that are going to make a turbine functional. What I would do is I would go with the heat concentration, probably use water, but I would use a Stirling engine to generate the power, because it can work from relatively low temperature differentials. And the advantage of the water is as a heat transport mechanism to take it from your big outdoor accumulation field where you're getting all of your heat from the sun, and send it to your little building where you have the Stirling generator. Stirling engines can be quite efficient, and they also become more efficient with larger heat gradients, but can operate with just a few degrees. And I think that would be the way I would do it. And yes, you could do that for less than $5,000. Would it be competitive for that $5,000 to not be spent on you buying, say, natural gas? Or would it be competitive versus electrical over its lifespan? I don't know, but it could be done.
Okay. We have another question here.
Okay.
We're just going through questions here, so it's like
Go.
we love getting the questions, though.
Yeah, I love questions. I love answering them.
This is not annoying us at all. So
No.
Keep
going.
flooding them. Okay, so this one from Run and Fun. Okay, Run and Fun. That's actually going to go. Okay. We have personal question. There are many speculations of your personal history. Would you be willing to speak on that? How do you acquire your knowledge? And you have talked about this before.
Yeah, I covered that in the first live stream. You may not have seen it, but
do a little brief summary.
Right.
Yeah.
Always loved science, physics, engineering, and you can tell if a little kid's going to be interested in that. Usually in the first 5 or 6 years, it's sort of a mindset. And so that part had led me originally to go to university for the purposes of chemistry, physical chemistry. I was interested in physics. I was interested in chemistry. Physical chemistry is sort of like the deep electronic basis of chemistry, as opposed to sort of the mixing of the reagents. It's what's going on with the molecules. And I was in a laboratory which was highly recommended that people participate in if they want to get, say, a graduate position, they want to get to a doctoral program. You want to have a good resume, a good CV. And so as a college student, I had done some work in a catalysis lab where we were making aerogel and grinding it up into sand and then impregnating it with materials like palladium and platinum in order to produce catalysts. So it was a catalysis lab. And as the grunt scientist, the student, I was the one who was sort of delegated the job of crushing up the aerogel and what do they call that? Grading it. I forget. I'll remember that in just a minute. But you bring it, you grade it with different sieves to different particle sizes, and then preparing that for the impregnation with the metals. And it was Saturday night. My to-be future wife and her friends and some of our friends were down in Chicago, going to the restaurants and the bars and dancing and all this sort of thing. And I was up there in the laboratory with a couple of old cups of coffee, and I saw this researcher, a guy that I knew, but obviously a postdoc, who was also schlepping down the hall outside the warehouse. And it was probably 8, 9, 10 o'clock on a Saturday evening. And he was carrying another one of these horrible vending machine cups of coffee. And I sort of had that epiphany where I thought, I love working with the machines, but I cannot stand working with only machines. I wanted to have human contact. I enjoy what we're doing right here because of the human contact. So I changed my major to medicine and ended up getting a degree in medicine, became an MD, and practiced as a practicing physician for the last 40 years or so. And I've enjoyed that a great deal as well, but always retained that intense interest in the scientific basis of even medical work. Didn't do research in medicine, but always liked it. So I was involved with working on lasers, doing my own hobbies. And that's sort of the background. And that's why I sort of have that kind of rather broad approach to problems, more of a generalist rather than a specialist. And I don't regret anything I did. I'm glad I made the choices I did.
I just think that's interesting because last time when this was asked in our previous live stream, I almost knew nothing about what he just said. and that was so, I need some water.
That's cool.
But it was funny that he told all of that to you, and I knew almost none of that. I know some things that you guys don't know about that are actually really impressive things, but it would reveal names or locations and everything, so we can't go into that. But I always thought that was funny that there were secrets that he didn't tell me about, but everybody else knows now.
Well, you know about the foundation.
No,
Right.
exactly.
And we
That's
won't
what
get
I'm
into
talking
the
about.
details
That's
on
what
that.
I'm talking about. But I think it's interesting, like these backstories of how you got into.
Yeah.
Because I never asked him, but I didn't know about it either. He
When I
never
was
told
in the
me.
war, I fought all the enemies
On D-Day.
barehanded.
Yeah, right.
I'm
Okay.
not that old.
So yeah, I didn't say you were. Okay. So we have another one here. So from Irving Nestor, $5. I would love a series on vortex cooling, especially optimizing applications and DIY building. Also, have you ever considered topics related to radio? Actually, before you answer that question, your last point with radio, my brother and his son does do radio, and he's very heavily involved in that, and he knows probably more than you could ever imagine about radio. Trust me, he knows more than you could ever imagine. We would love to have him as a guest, as the third person here, and if you happen to come back, maybe in our third or
fourth video, he may be
live
here.
stream. Yeah, he might be here, and you could ask him everything under the sun about radio, and he'd probably be able to answer it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to shut him up.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Leave.
About the vortex cooling, though.
Sure.
I don't know enough about it to know how close the sort of commercial units you can get are optimized. So they may, in fact, be quite good. For people who are unaware of it, if you take high-pressure air and you send it into a, quote, vortex generator, it often looks just like a pipe. What happens is the spinning air will actually cause the slow-moving, cooler air to distribute toward one end of the tube versus the other end. And so you sort of divide the velocities. In other words, divide the temperatures of the air inside of the tube. A lot of people think, and this is something that's probably worth bringing up, is that when you say it's 20 degrees Celsius in here, well, that's the average or the mean velocity of the air molecules as they're moving around and bouncing into each other. That's the mean. It's not the highest and the lowest. There are some molecules that are hardly moving. They're probably not far from absolute zero for a very, very brief period of time before something hits them. And there are others that are probably traveling as fast as if they were at 1,000 degrees Celsius. But the vast majority are located right around the mean. What the vortex generator is able to do is able to selectively group. It doesn't actually cool or heat the air. It groups or divides them. So you can produce a blast of cooling air. You can actually get freezing air temperatures out of the end of a vortex generator, or out of the other end, hot air. And yeah, they would be interesting to look into, and I've always been intrigued with them to see if I could build one. I will look a little bit more into that and see if it's something that we could make without too much effort and could do so successfully.
Okay, we have another question here. We're getting them constantly. I love this. I love this. Yeah.
Go. I'm good.
I understand.
I'm on a roll.
Yeah, he's on a roll, and I just like the fact that we have enough stuff to respond to, because otherwise we'd be just talking to each other. So I love this. Okay, so from oh god,
Don't.
Adrenio Colo. I'm so sorry. You're from Brazil. I like the country, but I seriously, I can't pronounce your name. But I thank you for the super chat. So it's hello from Brazil. What about graphene mass production? I loved the last video about it. You mentioned a paper, but I can't buy it. Thank you very, very much. Now, when he mentions a paper that you can't buy,
have you ever gone to Sci-Hub?
Yeah, I think
SCI,
he might be.
HUB?
Yeah.
You can get a lot of freeware, shareware papers through Sci-Hub.
Let me pull this up.
And they often are sort of, looked upon. Yeah. They're looked upon with some skepticism, because a lot of papers are sort of sold to, say, like Springer or any of these other sort of libraries of papers that you then have to pay in order to be able to access. You might look into that. I won't go into a lot of that because
can we do a little bit of it? Like, if you wanted to get one of those papers, like, say, slightly relating to, I don't know, graphene.
Well, what you have to do is you'd look under one of those where it says Sci-Hub EE, REN, RU, Russia.
So I click on one of
those are the different sort of host platforms in different parts of the world. And in the enter the URL, you enter the entire HTTP address of the paper. And if the paper is available, not all of them will be, but a surprising number of them, especially if they're more than a year or so old, will be there. And you can pick up some pretty good papers that you can access. With respect to the graphene, once you take a look at the paper, the continuous process paper involved, what's his name? Islam? I can't remember his first name. His last name is Islam. He's actually at the Indian Institute of Technology in Patna.
That makes sense.
And he had developed a method for using a plasma spray system for doing the graphene production. Ultimately, when I covered the graphene, when I discussed the way the method that we used based on the rice paper operated in order to produce the graphene, the magic occurs in the cooling phase. You heat the carbon atoms up to the point that they just break up. Whatever you started with, whether it's coal or a beetle skeleton, it doesn't matter. It becomes carbon. When it cools down, because graphene is energetically the most stable form of the carbon, if it cools at the right rate, you'll form graphene. If you rush it, it may just stack up into graphite. So one of the methods that we had demonstrated used the cooling after electrically heating inside of a closed tube. The open method that Dr. Islam had come up with is to use a plasma spray apparatus. I think it was from a Swiss company. And plasma spray basically operates a little bit like a plasma cutter, where you generate a very high energy arc between a cathode and an anode, and then you spray material through this very high temperature arc. It liquefies it, it can even vaporize it, and then as it travels a few centimeters, because of ambient cooling and radiative cooling, it will cool. And you can use this to coat parts that you want to, say, put chromium onto to make them hard, or you want to put diamond-like carbon, DLC carbon, onto lenses and optics that provide more abrasion resistance. This is a very well-established method, and you can buy these devices for doing this. He introduced carbon and an inert atmosphere, I believe it was argon. And the idea was that he would allow the carbon to heat up to the melting point, like we did in the rice paper, based on the rice paper, and then allow it to cool in an inert environment that doesn't have any oxygen in it, so that you will get true graphene, not reduced graphene or the oxidized graphene, but the precious stuff, pure graphene. And apparently it worked. What ended up spraying into his collection box was effectively graphene at the rate of grams per second, or maybe kilograms per minute, a far, far faster way. I haven't seen any follow-up papers or research from that group, but definitely that is something we're pursuing. I've even got the plasma spray equipment already. So it's just a matter of figuring out how to set the parameters and see if we can get this to work.
All right. So now another question.
Good.
From ZYZZYVA303. Have you guys considered trying to make a high-power gas dynamic laser? I know you love combustion.
No. Part of the reason is when I was growing up, or 30 or 40 years ago, when the military was looking at gas dynamic lasers as an alternative to for directed energy weapons, that sort of thing. The gases involved are often very, very toxic. You're talking, fluorine and other types of very nasty gases. And the problem with them is the fact that there is so much hardware involved in that, not only the risk associated with the gases, but the beams are invariably in the infrared, near infrared to mid infrared. And the optics then also become problematic, as well as the gas handling equipment, the size and scale. I'd be more interested in something like a copper vapor laser. If you're not familiar with it, you might look into it. There's some similarities in terms of the issues you have to face. But with fiber lasers and diode lasers becoming so easy to obtain and their performance being so much better than any of the earlier laser systems, I'm not really very inclined to go down the gas dynamic.
Yeah, okay. So we have another one here from Julian Herborn. Have you ever considered building a real rocket out of your hybrid engines? You could collaborate with BPS Space. He has some of the... you are?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He has some of the licenses you need.
Yeah, I definitely am considering that, because the hybrid rocket engine is something that nobody has really done much with in the small rocket or amateur area. And the pulsed detonation engine, which we have yet to show you, has the potential to sort of revolutionize small-scale rocketry because of its power and its flexibility and some of the simplification of the pumping systems. I'm very intrigued about the potential for that kind of an engine, as well as a hybrid engine. Our major problem is our location. We live in a densely populated area. There are no deserts we can conveniently drive out to in an hour to be able to test things. And a lot of these, if you watch BPS Space, which I do, I follow him, it's a great channel, he has access to launch facilities and places where you could safely CATO one of these rockets and nobody's going to get hurt. We don't here. And so if you did a project, it would have to involve, lots of transporting of equipment as well as potentially people.
Which
we might
we've done that before. We've transported things before.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put it past us, but I wouldn't hope on it happening soon.
It would have to be a collaboration.
Because anytime we've done any of these like recent rocket videos, they've been literally outside that door. Behind him.
Yeah.
So if you see my finger pointing there, we have a big sliding door there, and we literally do it on the other side of that door.
Right.
And we only do it
on the weekends.
So people don't complain / know about it.
Luckily, though, we discovered that there's an outdoor firing range just about, 400 meters from here.
And we didn't know about that until we heard the gunshots. But yeah.
But that helps to cover for some of the noise,
Yeah.
just to let you know. But you're right. A collaboration does make some sense.
Yeah, well, he was right, and it would take some like time and travel and everything, but potentially nothing's out of the question like that.
Yeah.
Unless it's a different country where you have to fly the stuff, that's not going to happen.
Right. Right.
But also, I just had to say something about the pulse detonation engine. That's going to take a little bit of some time to set up because we want to make sure this is super safe. He was telling me about the power and everything, and I didn't really believe him. But then I looked into it, and it's like, yeah, okay. We need some blast shields. We want to be standing behind as much as we can. That's delayed.
Yeah.
We want to be standing about, 50 feet with, concrete bricks or steel plates, anything that we can get. And, it's far more than what we did with the other jet engine video
Right.
that we what was it called?
Well, the
I can
pulse
look it up.
jet engine that we did before was loud and it was present and it
Even
makes
with
a
the
lot of noise.
augmenter. Yeah.
The pulse detonation engine, the reason that I'm sort of excited about its possibilities is that the construction is so simple that even if you can't weld, you could probably build this. If you can weld, it's trivial. You could probably put one together in an hour or two, and has the potential to develop more fuel efficiency than even the Raptor engines because of the nature of detonation burning, and doesn't require pumps, which is the big major problem you get into whenever you deal with anything other than a solid rocket motor. See, a solid rocket motor, you put everything inside the chamber, you close it up, you light it, and you're good. When you get into hybrid rockets and you're going to be pumping or flowing something into the chamber, you have to obviously have a source of liquid, in our case nitrous oxide, that's at a higher pressure than the combustion chamber, and that's not that high. The combustion chambers can run at hundreds of atmospheres, and so pumping the liquids or pumping the fuel and the propellant into the engine is often more difficult than the rest of the rocket build. The pulse detonation engine can operate with almost no forward pressure resistance because it's pulsed. Even if it's pulsed hundreds of times per second, you have intervals where you can infuse more fuel and propellant. So it has the possibility of generating huge amounts of thrust in something that does not contain everything within the same chamber, and at the same time can be done so with relatively low investment in terms of equipment and labor. So I'm really excited about the possibility of that engine, which you can't see it in the background, but it's actually sitting on a table right behind me right now. So, yeah.
You could move it at some point, but yeah, probably not for this video.
Not with all the tanks next to it.
Right. Well, you can sort of see it there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You see the rear end of it.
Yeah, behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's on wheels and everything, and the problem is you would have to move those tanks and disconnect them to move the table back. But
yeah,
you get the main idea.
You'll
and
see
it's the
it
same. It's the same table that is used in these 3 videos.
Right. Just a different engine mounted on there. And like I said, when we get into it, I'll explain it in enough detail. You could build one yourself. And collaborating with somebody who could actually put it on something that can get it up in the air. He's an excellent channel, and he's got a lot of time and skill that have developed with his efforts to try to. He wants to get to space.
Good luck.
I think he might. He might.
Yeah, might also die though too.
He's got a good channel. He's a pretty safe.
No.
Guy,
I understand.
No.
It's always a joke.
I'm
it's
sorry.
Always a joke.
He's going to try to send his rocket to space.
Not him to space.
Right.
Yeah. I've seen people.
Yeah. Right. No.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I've been putting these off, but we have a few. Oh, we got $10 from Silent S, and
what's the question?
We can't really respond to it, but I appreciate the patronage. But would you ever Evel Knievel a steam rocket? I don't.
I could, but I'm not particularly interested. You just superheat water in a tank, And eventually you go way above the boiling point. When you let it out, it forms steam. And the steam is the expanding gas. And that's how he tried to launch himself across,
Yeah, I got it.
a
Yeah.
Grand Canyon or something like that.
But
But the technology is not all that exciting to me because the amount of energy that you can store in that is very limited compared to a propellant. So probably not.
yeah, okay. Okay, so Ole, and I know you responded again. Thanks again for responding again. And you put how to pronounce your name, but it didn't help.
You can
It didn't help.
you can work on that at
It
your
didn't
own
help.
time.
Yeah,
right?
I'll learn other. I can't. I seriously can't. But I seriously thank you though for the NOK 500. I don't even know what.
You know what's interesting
Actually,
too?
no, I have to.
I've got to say this.
What is NOK? I need to know what country that is.
We get people who speak multiple languages and are
Norwegian.
courteous enough to us that they submit their questions in the only language we're good at. And despite that, we still get your names mispronounced. So we apologize for that, or I would feel the same if I had to
No, but
try to pronounce
it's
it.
like it's the common stereotype. The only language Americans know is English, and it's true.
It's true.
It's true.
It's true. It's fair.
It's true. Yeah,
fair
I don't
criticism.
know Norwegian or how to. Yeah, we got it. So your follow up with this is more equipment, money for you. Your dad mentioned aerogel, an optimized process demo on how to produce it in large amounts and possibly conduct some tests on its properties used in heat batteries. I'm just tossing ideas.
Yeah. What was the interesting that heat battery? What was I think it was
I can pull
again
it back up
once again MIT. They're always
And you can
a
read it
little
here
ahead
if
of
you
us. But they came up with an aerogel insulated solar heat harvesting system. If you remember our earlier video where we compared the output from a solar panel, a PV cell.
Actually, what is it? I can look it up.
Well, what was it? Which should you use? Remember it had the big solar panel next to that big heater. You can scan through. No, farther back.
It's not air conditioning.
Farther back. No, it's where we had the PV panel next to that big board.
Let me pull this up so they can.
But
see
while
what
you're
I'm
looking
at.
through that,
no. It's good doing this together.
keep going.
How to build
There it is.
this one?
I think it's the one on the bottom right, the orange.
Should you really use solar panels?
Yes, that one. That video, what we did is I accumulated heat in a solar box, basically an insulated box that contained piping that was painted dark, non-reflective black, put it in the sunlight, and then also accumulated power on the PV cell and used it to provide resistance heating to an identical volume of water to determine the efficiency of being able to accumulate energy, not through the photovoltaic method, but just simply thermally. Well, what the MIT group did is this large box that I used to accumulate the heat was replaced by using aerogel, which is a fantastic thermal insulator, but at the same time is relatively transparent, almost completely transparent, to visible and near-infrared light. So the heat was able to get into these coils that they had located in this little slab of aerogel, and was able to reach temperatures well above the boiling point of water, even hotter than we were able to achieve, in an extremely lightweight device, fairly simple in its construction except for the manufacture of aerogel. Aerogel is a fantastic material. It's got a lot of interesting properties, and it can be made out of silica-based, the clear, translucent-looking material, or even carbon-based. There's carbon-based aerogel materials for reasons of lightweight and insulation properties, but it's also electrically conductive. As far as I remember, now I'm just off the cuff describing the manufacture, is that it has to be done in a supercritical CO2 chamber. In other words, to form these matrix of open-aired or open crystals, rather than allowing the material, the silica dioxide or the carbon, to simply collapse into a blob to keep it open as it's hardening. That has to be done under very high pressures around room temperature in a CO2 liquid or a supercritical CO2 environment, which means a pressure container. Nothing we couldn't do. We've got, most of the hardware, but it would have to be put together. It is a fascinating topic, and it is not a bad one for us to investigate to see if we could produce something usable for another purpose, not just to see if we could make it at home. But if we can, then we'll show you how to do it.
Okay. Now we have another one. So I really want to make sure I don't miss anybody here.
Okay.
So we've got Lord Garth. Interesting name. I know, own. Maybe now I know. I don't know. Either way, 3A molecular sieve. Sieve. Media thanks thanks to your hand sanitizer video. Any other uses I should look into?
Yeah, it's great for drying. And when I say drying, I mean the removal of water. It can be used as an air-based water absorber simply because the enormous surface area of any kind of a molecular sieve allows it to accumulate moisture on its surface through adsorption. But also it can be put into a liquid, like, say, a bottle of booze, and it will absorb the water preferentially because of the size of the molecules, but the alcohol molecules can't get inside. So this pile of powder that may have a kilometer of square surface area, if you can get into the pores, selectively will absorb the water, and the powder, from the point of view of the alcohol, has a surface area of maybe a quarter square meter. Very little of the alcohol is lost. So you can selectively absorb out water. There's different types of molecular sieves with different pore sizes that can be used for all types of separation processes, is used industrially for that purpose, not just for concentrating your booze or making better hand sanitizer. It's a very interesting topic. And yes, I have what was the name of the company? I'll try to think of it as Deltronic or something like that. That sells it at relatively low cost. If we do that video, I will definitely give you the reference to the company. But if you look it up, molecular sieves are cheap. They're very cheap. And they can be refurbished in an oven. You can drive off the moisture and use them over and over and over again. So it's a very affordable and approachable project for somebody who would be interested in doing that. So yeah, I will look into that more.
Okay. Next one from Philip. I'm not going to...
Just go with Philip.
Yeah. No, I like the ongoing joke, though. It's like, I can't pronounce any names. It's great. Okay, so take minerals from seawater with fraction distillation? Question mark.
When I was a little kid, I thought, would it be possible for us to get gold out of seawater? Because there is gold dissolved in seawater. You'd have to process 100,000 cubic meters to get. It's so dilute, it's crazy. But there are a number of minerals that you could get out of seawater with fractional distillation. And what you would eventually get is a concentrated liquid that then might be practical for you to then be able to remove the minerals directly. So you take the fractional distillation, maybe solar-based, maybe low-grade, low speed, through a solar water heater, maybe an aerogel water heater, something like that, and remove 99.9% of the volume of the water, leaving behind a slurry of material that may have some valuable minerals in it. It is possible, but it would be a scalable situation. So we would probably want to make artificial seawater, introduce some sort of a mineral in there, and then see if we could recover it.
Okay, another one from James. I can pronounce that. I'm not doing your last name because your comment is hopefully name is pronounceable.
Don't prove it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Video or series on per and you would know this, polyfluoroalkyl. Maybe I can show that to you. I don't mind taking a little break. Here, if you can see it on here. Can you see that? this right here.
I have to tell you, I'm not familiar with that.
PFAS.
I'm not familiar with that. I'd have to look it up, and I'm not going to keep everybody watching it. But
Substances where they're stored in the body and how effectively blood donation reduces conc.
concentration.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't.
Good opportunity for linear ODEs.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I'll move to the next one, but I will pull it up a little bit. Okay, let's move to the next one. And I would like to talk about a few other things before we not before, but we can keep going into your questions. But if there's a break in this, we'll talk about something else. Okay, we got from Webbles, $10. Thank you very much. Another potential collaboration would be a storm chaser like Reed Timmer, who intercepts tornadoes. Okay, sounds interesting. He could use the physics and engineering help to measure the extreme tornadoes.
You know, it's funny you bring this one up because
that's good.
I don't know if anybody has recently watched the most recent video put out by StyroPyro. It was a little bit disturbing at first because it's actually a personal video about some health issues, and I'm not revealing anything because I'm getting this from his video. But apparently, because of it, he's not going to be doing his normal videos for some time. Could be a little bit of a gap.
This specific guy?
Yeah, StyroPyro.
Oh, okay. Well, no, StyroPyro, not Reed Timmer.
No.
StyroPyro.
No,
Okay.
StyroPyro.
Okay, got it.
And one of the things he said is that in the meantime, he's going to be doing a few collaborative videos, and one of them was he recently did some storm chasing. And that is something I've always been intrigued by because it seems like the first thing you do when you hear about a tornado is you hide or you run away. And so it's kind of like, I don't know, the 9/11 people that ran into the building to rescue people. It's like, this is not the natural behavior of a person is to run towards something that's threatening.
Right.
But it is exciting. I mean, it would be kind of fun to see, you know, something on the horizon.
And if you can bring something to measure something that they normally don't measure or can't measure,
right,
that's a good idea.
Right, like maybe a Doppler radar, you know, or maybe something that you could produce.
They probably have that, but fair enough.
I don't know if they would have Doppler radar. They might be able to get Doppler radar reports.
Okay, fair enough.
Their own little handheld device?
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't know about that. But you have seen their like extreme, not tanks, but they're almost like tanks and everything. And they have every single possible equipment device that you could fit inside of one of those. They
I'm
do
wondering
have
because
that.
like,
It's like, would you have something better? Probably not. You'd have to buy something or get something.
Or not everybody maybe is that well equipped. That might be something. But in addition to that, it's like, what is an automotive police speed radar? It's Doppler. It's basically looking at what happens to a known frequency once it bounces off your car and either accumulates energy because you're coming toward
it's a laser like detector,
a LiDAR system.
Right. Okay.
So the one thing that's neat about radar is obviously it can work through clouds and it can, you know, it's not interfered with by particulates. But at the same time, LiDAR systems are widely available too. I mean, they're used in robotics, and you know, there's something that might have an application. Would they work at several kilometers from a tornado to measure wind speeds? I don't know, but I think I'm going to look into that, because whether or not you could retrofit or hack into one of these kinds of systems or extend its reach with telescopics or, you know, more power in your transmitter, that would be interesting. I think I will do a little bit of research into that. I might not follow up on it, but I'm definitely going to see if it's something that's worth doing, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, it's always possible. And just so you know, guys, like we have so many ideas and like comments that it's almost impossible to, because it's just the two of us and sometimes three, to be able to come up with stuff. Like even just using our boat takes time. And we're not able to, we don't have the time to be able to do that.
We're not complaining. We're just making excuses.
Yeah, exactly. I'm making good excuses, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Good excuses for why that, like, all of these ideas, while they may be, like, very good and we'll do them in the future, we're not going to get to them right away.
True.
You know,
True. How many
so don't.
employees does Linus Tech Tips have?
I don't want to think about it.
But it's not 3.
Too many. Too many.
Well,
That's so many.
Isn't it like something on the order of like 80?
Actually, I think it is too many, unless he has 5 or something, which he doesn't. It is something like 80. I think it is too many because then at that point, to be able to like pay all of your employees and all that sort of stuff, you have to do sponsorships. You have to pump out videos, even if it's not a good video. And I think they even mentioned this in the past, like on one of their podcasts or whatever they did, where they were saying that they have to pump out videos so that they can still get their monetization and all of that sort of stuff.
They're on the treadmill, basically. They've got to keep making more videos, and therefore they have to hire more people to make videos, which means they need to support those people, and you can kind of get trapped into that. So,
right, like if we were doing a video, which we wouldn't ever do, but on this laptop, well, actually, we will be doing a video in the future about the batteries.
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to give it away, but something about batteries and temperature we're going to be doing. But if we did a video like that and we didn't get the best results, you know what we wouldn't do is just post it and say, whatever, we need a video out. We'll wait and say like, okay, the experiment didn't work right. We have to redo it, fix it, and then do it again. And then finally, once we get correct results, then we post that video.
Yeah, actually, that's something that nobody has asked yet, but I think I'm just going to offer it.
Yeah.
What percentage of the ideas that we go from just, say, a suggestion to actually investing some time, money, and effort to try to make them work do not become videos? And I would say probably roughly
30%.
I'd say about a quarter, about 25% just it's dead. We're never going to make it work, or it turns out it's not interesting, or it's not worth it.
Do it later, and then that later never happens.
I would say another 25% are close, where it's like I have to go back multiple times to fix the problem, to make it work, and eventually, the light bulb goes off, we fix it, and we make it work.
Yeah.
And 50% of them are probably kind of knew where you're going from the beginning, and you kind of ended up sort of where you planned to go, even though you might have taken a bit of a circuitous route. So that's kind of the breakdown on the videos. So we've got dozens of ideas that may never come to fruition. But anyway.
Yeah, okay. So I have a few here. There were a few good ones that I want to talk about, and I just want to, again, always want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So these are important. So our last one that we didn't respond to, so Frisky Dingo.
Oh, yes.
Okay. What is he, common commentator?
No, I got the name right.
Said, yeah. Well, yeah, it's easy if your name is Leopard Pie the Fifth.
Don't make fun of people who can write clearly.
I understand, but when it's in a different language, say it was in Chinese characters, I'm not going to get it. I'm sorry.
but these aren't in Chinese characters.
Yeah, but it's not pronounced in English. Okay. He's making fun of me, and he's not having to read these things. I feel like he would do a worse job at that.
I would.
Actually, actually, I'm glad, because if I was in his position, I'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
I'm not doing that idea. So I think this is a good mix. I'll mess up with the names. Okay, so his Frisky Dingo for $5. What are your thoughts on photon entanglement and using laser tweezers and superconductive wire for single photon section?
I don't know if you can manipulate once you've entangled photons. Anybody, just real briefly, entangled photons generally nowadays are produced by taking a photon, a particle of light, 1 unit, quantum unit, and passing it into a crystal or a quantum dot, and creating 2 photons of half the energy. Effectively, you get 2 new particles or 2 new photons, but they have half the energy. So energy is conserved in the process. Those generated photons are entangled with each other. And entanglement has to do with the fact that the properties of the 2 particles are shared, so that what happens to one will effectively happen to the other. And one of the problems or advantages with entanglement is that whatever you do to one of the particles will effectively cause either the other particle to follow that change or effectively can cause the entanglement to collapse. They no longer are entangled. And it's great for quantum encryption, for security purposes. It also has the ability to be able to communicate information between, say, two computers at incredibly high rates. There's all of those advantages. It also makes instrumentation, very, very sensitive instrumentation that's measuring temperatures and pressures and gravity and all of these other parameters, achievable because of the super sensitivity of those two photons. Once you form them, though, if you were to try to manipulate one of them with, say, laser tweezers or a superconducting wire, or any kind of interaction with anything, you're going to affect the other one. And so I think the overall arching issue is that entanglement involves having to produce the photons, but also to be able to detect the changes that occur in one photon because of something you did to another one. Yeah, producing entangled photons is something actually that's not that difficult to do anymore. Now with fiber lasers and crystal multipliers, photon sources, you can literally go online and buy yourself an entangled photon source if you want to get one. It's about as big as a small stereo and little fiber input and some fiber output and a couple of knobs, and you can actually produce entangled photons. So it's possible. Is it easy? No. But the underlying principle is actually relatively simple.
All right. So we have a few here, and I need to go away for a second. But
Okay. Give me a good one.
There's a few here that actually I really want to respond to. One is about the drone. I'm almost positive that's what they're talking about. Someone from Croatia, a bunch of different things. But some good things that I can respond to. So we'll get back to you if you sent one and it seems like we're skipping you. We're not. I'm going to be going back to you.
So give me something I can respond to.
Yeah. So I think the best one is probably the James one where he talked about PFAS. It's Teflon. Sorry, not clear earlier.
Right, but okay, so we pulled this up here and I read about it. It's almost
it's
like microplastics, the kind of issues that people would have with that. Problem is, I don't know enough about that.
Okay.
Like I'm just sort of reading about it, going, "Oh, interesting." You know, it's maybe related a little bit to microplastics and human contamination, but I can't answer the question.
Okay,
you know more about it than I do.
He does. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. What about Philip? Brian from Reverse Osmosis pollutes plus has LIMGBr. And I'm guessing Mg is magnesium? Br, I don't know.
Oh, Brian. I got it. Okay.
Brian.
Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, I thought you said Brian.
No.
Okay,
no.
Brian
Philip commented.
Yeah.
Brian from Reverse Osmosis.
Right. Basically, what...
Can you respond to that for a second?
Basically, with reverse osmosis, what you're doing is what I brought up earlier about, getting minerals out of seawater. I said, well, you could evaporate 99.9% of the water and then end up using the slurry with the concentrated minerals in it to extract the minerals. Another method would be to use reverse osmosis, effectively use a membrane to separate out the pure water, the osmotically filtered water, from what's left behind. Typically, in a reverse osmosis system, if you get one in your home, we have one. What happens is the water comes in and you're selectively squeezing through pressure pure water through the membrane, and what's left behind is less pure, but is flushed away with the large quantities of water that are coming through the system. So what ends up coming out of your drain might have 5% more minerals in it, and what's left in the filtered component is devoid of the minerals. So it's a selectivity, a filtration system. It is an interesting approach as opposed to, say, boiling or evaporative concentration. The one problem you might have, though, is that these filters can become plugged up, chemically plugged up, or even mechanically plugged up by the solutes or the minerals, the things that you're trying to concentrate on one side. And so if you went to the point where you were actually trying to concentrate those minerals, your osmotic filter is probably going to fail long before you get to a very high concentration. That's one of the reasons you're constantly flushing water from the dirty side to get rid of the, quote, sewage, the stuff you don't want. Even though it might be still quite drinkable, it might be very pure, it's just a little more concentrated in the minerals. I don't think you would be able to concentrate it to the point that you can get something useful out for the purposes of, say, extracting minerals. My suspicion is the evaporative cooling is the way to go if what you want is going to end up being a sludge at the end of the process. Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm here. So, okay. I'm not sure if, what you were talking about.
No,
but-
we're fine.
Okay. So, the jammer wasn't a big
What was
deal,
something
but,
you were interested in, you said?
there were a few. Yeah.
Okay.
So one actually, just a fun thing from Jonathan Hughes. Got that name
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for commenting. So at Tech Ingredients, and wishing you a happy Father's Day.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for your hard work in making your educational videos and teaching others. I've learned a lot from you.
Oh, great.
It's very sweet.
Thanks. That's the reason we do
like
it.
Donate. Do ent. Okay. I don't think I got that wrong. Hello from Croatia. Big thank you for using the metric system in your videos. It makes it much easier for us Europeans to watch. I do agree that it is probably good for you to use both, like whenever you can, to convert. And I've noticed, like more recently, like with Americans doing videos, like reviews on cars and other things, that they more often use kilometers and metric system values, because a lot of Americans sort of know when it's not quite right. Like when they say 0 to 100 in 3 seconds or something, they know they're not talking about 0 to 60, and it goes back and forth. And there's only, I think it's 3 countries in the world that use the Imperial system.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's the U.S., Myanmar, and Liberia, I think. I think those are the only 3 countries.
Well, we're in good company then.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting too about that whole issue of like metric and imperial is that you're right. I try to give both, and I can convert pretty quickly simply because I've grown up having to do both. If you're a machinist or you have tooling, one of the most expensive things is the fact that you have to nowadays pretty much duplicate everything in the United States with metric and imperial systems. A 1/4-inch drill. You also need a 6-millimeter drill. Those sorts of things where it's like everything has to be in. Yeah, but wrenches.
I know.
You get a product from China and you want to take it apart, you better get out your metric tools. But if you got an old part from a used, something in the United States, you get out your imperial tools. It is a bit of a hassle.
And I know it would cost a lot of money, and like it would be a big hassle. And this is just sort of a fun thing, but can all countries agree that how about we switch all driving to the right-hand side of the road, right? So the few countries that don't have right-hand drive, they all have to become right-hand drive, and then we'll switch to metric. How about that?
Okay, that's your challenge.
Yeah.
Well,
is that okay?
Here's another one that I also think is kind of interesting, where it's like a lot of Europeans early on when I did this channel, and I was sort of converting to metric when I thought of it. In other words, I would do it because we grew up with the imperial system, so it was not alien to me, but with the medical background, scientific background, and with time, the metric has sort of worked its way into our system. But one of the things that I always found fascinating is when you would talk about supercars. You would say this supercar made in Italy has an enormously powerful engine. And they don't say it's like 1.5 megawatts of output. They say it's 1,000 horsepower. And it's like, okay, horsepower. Talk about an archaic system of like, how much weight could a horse pull in 1 minute, 33,000 foot-pounds, versus, joules, ergs, calories, all of these different systems. We've got some really strange ones.
Yeah, but the UK also has stones. So,
Right.
we have, multiple countries have archaic
Oh,
measuring systems.
I know, and it's
Yeah.
fascinating because a lot of them are like bushels,
Yeah. Okay.
bushels
Yep.
for volume,
Yep. Yeah.
and
Yep.
gallons versus liters, and you've got millimeters versus inches. Time.
Well, 24-hour versus 12,
It's
or what?
weird that we have 24 hours, 60 minutes, 60 seconds, 365 and a quarter days per year. Okay, all like kind of weird numbers, but everybody's the same. We don't have like
China
units.
isn't.
China does not use seconds
Oh
or
no,
minutes?
no, that's the same. But the years are totally different. They don't use. I don't want to get into it, but they don't use the religious back. Like it's not the year.
Oh, you mean like before Christ,
2024.
after Christ,
Yeah,
or
yeah, right.
before
They have
current
multiple,
period?
and North
okay.
Korea does the same. But China is a little bit odd. Like when I've asked people there, like it's 2024, and they know what I'm talking about. It's not like totally like out of their head.
Got it.
But they have some slight differences when it comes to dates.
But that difference, as you're describing it,
Yeah.
is a starting point. In other words, when 1 year passes here, 1 year passes there.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, sure, yeah, yeah.
So
of
the
course.
size of their units are the same. They're starting
At
from
least
a
I
different
think so.
point.
Yeah,
But I
could be
found that
wrong- I
kind of
could be wrong,
fascinating.
yeah.
Is that measurements of volume, measurements of weight, measurements of distance, different. Measurements of time, universal. Kind of interesting.
Ancient Sumerians had a 60 base number system.
Whoa.
Didn't know that. If that's the case, I don't know.
See, I always assumed the base 10 came from how many fingers we had to count with. I mean, you got to pick
Makes sense.
something. Why not base 3, base 8, that thing.
Right. And then feet make sense if it's roughly
The length of your foot.
And then
right.
stones. That's pretty arbitrary, but
It's worrisome.
a stone that could fit in your hand, maybe that's the measurement. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I
but
think there was
obviously you can't
16 pounds or
you
something
can't
like that.
design SpaceX rockets based off of what
No.
what kind of stone can
I
fit your hand
I
or
hope.
how long your foot
I'll
is.
tell you this: as an American, I hope SpaceX is using the metric system. How's that?
Well, I wouldn't care which system they use.
I
I just
hope
hope
they
they
are.
use only one and they don't mix it up. That's all I care about.
Okay.
You
Right.
can use some alien system that no one's heard of.
Right.
I'd be fine with that.
But I think they're probably using the metric system. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
well, they're based in the U.S. though, so I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. But they're trying to fly payloads from all over the world, and you have to interface your fairing dimensions and your masses and everything else. I
Sure.
can't imagine they're saying, well, how many pounds does your satellite weigh? I think they probably say, how many kilograms does it mass?
Yeah, but the reason and don't worry, guys. Like we'll get back to your questions. and
Elon, if
everything.
you call in,
No, but
we will
yeah,
answer.
that'll happen. Well, actually, if we are on Twitter now, so it is
True.
technically possible that we
Right.
would be able to talk to him about that stuff.
Could you imagine if we got a tour of like SpaceX, like Everyday Astronaut or
Yeah,
whatever?
and he
the
gets
first
those.
question that I ask is, do you do it in kilograms or in pounds? You
That
know
might be
he'd laugh.
actually.
He'd
Yeah, that
probably
actually
like
is a
it.
good question.
Yeah,
Because
anyway.
actually, I doubt anybody's ever asked him that.
No one asks
No.
dumb questions like that.
Well, but it's a dumb, but actually quite. It's like, what's Starship made out of?
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
oh, how do you not know? It's like,
Yeah,
what's
right.
it made out of?
Right. Metal?
A bunch of different stuff. Actually.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Right.
there's a bunch. Like, obviously, because I highly doubt every single thing that they do is in metric. I'd be surprised by that. Every single little thing that they do is in metric, because that's not the case with Tesla. They don't do anything in metric in the U.S. They do everything in metric when it's outside of the U.S. But then if it's space-based, maybe do they now do everything in metric? Or is it sort of, if it's super important,
Well-
then it's in metric? Like,
Well,
you know what I mean?
yeah, like for example, let's say they sucked the perlite, the insulation out of some of their vertical oxygen tanks before
Okay.
they were taking them down.
Yeah.
And they had these huge trucks that had vacuums on them to get the perlite out of them. Did they take away pounds, tons, or kilograms of perlite. In the United States,
Or
I
you're
suspect it was probably Imperial.
it could be, but also tons. There's European tons versus U.S. tons.
Right.
See, that's where it like also becomes because
That's,
you
yeah,
might see like on the list it's tons, but you don't know which.
2,200 pounds, or is it 1,000 kilograms, or
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, yeah, right.
So
Anyway,
yeah,
we've gotten kind of off track here.
I think that was fun though. Okay, so something that I wanted to respond to. So Clayton McSweeney.
Okay.
For $2. Thank you very much. And you sent this a little while ago, but you asked about what happened to your hybrid multi-rotor project. So I assume that had to do with the drone that I said before.
Yeah.
So, and when you say hybrid multi-rotor, obviously it's a drone, but with like a gas engine underneath it. And if you look back at one of our previous videos, we only did like 1 or 2 on our drone. It's quite a long time ago,
It
so
was
it'll take me a little
6 years ago.
Yeah,
While
it'll
he's
take me
looking for it,
Well, no, I can keep talking. So we went through, and let me bring it up here. So you can see like we did things with drone props, getting the drone ready, testing the props, a hybrid drone generator. So that's when he was building / dealing with the generator, coming up with improvements, blah, 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 building his own drone rotors. And the only one where we actually flew a multi-rotor major like sized drone was this one. And we only got it to lift off. Hold on, let me show you guys here. So if you can see that above my head. So you can see it's hovering, it's doing its thing and everything, but we're treating it very like carefully. We're not like trying to go anywhere. We're not doing anything else. And this was very basic. The problem that we had, and we updated it, but we were too scared to, sorry about that. We were too scared to start flying it elsewhere because that was directly controlled by my hands. And we mounted the DJI, I think it's A3 on there, and that was a lot better, but we didn't risk flying it again because what happened after you saw this video on here, after you saw this, what happened is we ended up actually crashing it into the back of one of our cars. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh,
yeah.
I do.
Yeah, okay. So we crashed it into the back of one of our cars. It didn't kill me, and it didn't damage anything too much except for some of the rotors, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just actually was upstairs yesterday looking in the barn, looking at that rotor, and actually I needed a motor from one of the...
So he stole it from me.
So I stole it from the rotor. Part of the reason that we didn't pursue that too much was that the DJI rotors the DJI drones at that point were becoming very, very sophisticated, where they would do a lot of things that with this, it's almost like an RC aircraft where you have to go to a special field, you'd fly it up, you'd go around, you have to kind of keep an eye on it. The communications link to the controller was rather primitive, and so it didn't give you a lot of the flexibility that you now get almost out of the box. And for our purposes, once we sort of proved we could do it, trying to compete with DJI to what? Put a camera up there so that we could take images? Well, you can already do that with the small, self-contained, comes out of the box, ready to go. And if we wanted to do something larger, like say we wanted to bring pesticides or herbicides, to a farm, like a lot of them are using,
do that, yeah.
we could still do that, but it's like we don't own a farm and didn't really have an application. And you don't want to fly something that weighs 20 kilograms over people's heads or property in case something did go a little south, you could injure somebody. You got to be more careful. So it became more of a practical limitation rather than just a fundamental limitation, and that's why we sort of moved on from that.
Okay, that might have been your reason, but actually I would differ a little bit on that because my main problem with it was those DJI controllers. They're not built for drones of that size, and so they wouldn't react in the right way. And so that's why we would fly it so carefully. There was no way to set the settings right for something that size. it wasn't built for. They were built for even things that were larger than the little Mavics that you can get that we've used before. You can obviously scale it up and adjust the settings to have it less sensitive or more sensitive, but at that size, it oscillated and so many problems with that. So I would have like flown it over. I would have taken the risk and everything and flown it over. I mean, obviously that's not a populated area that we were at, but even if we found a park or a field or whatever, I still wouldn't want to because I fear that we're going to break the drone
Yeah,
almost immediately.
I think you're right because when you talk about the scale effect, it was that the fact that I think that system can control motors that are 1,000 horsepower. But the point is, those systems, like on that drone, have so much inertia to them that you were outside of the sort of feedback loops inside of the DJI system, so that what it would do is it would overcompensate.
It would start
And
to
then it
wobble.
would begin to get into sort of a feedback loop, and you couldn't break it because
Yeah.
if you did, then you lose any feedback, and then the thing would go wild.
Yeah.
So I think it was just that DJI system was not contemplating building something that was almost, able to carry a human being. They just didn't have the flexibility in terms of the programming. So that actually, if that was possible, we probably would have pursued that further and seen, how much could we really lift with this thing.
And we still have it.
Yeah.
So it's not like
And put the motor back.
Okay, fair enough. Well, actually, you have two though, right? You have one with
I've
the
got-
lights that's slightly smaller, and then you have
Right.
the big one that was shown on that.
As a
video.
matter of fact, I took it off the one that was the mid-size, not the monster that they just saw.
Okay, so the
So-
monster one you still have intact.
It's completely intact.
Theoretically, we could try it again.
Charge the
and
batteries
risk
and
it.
try it again. Yeah.
And actually,
Why not?
because if we've had it for so long but not used it, why not risk the fact that we're going to break it?
Right.
It's like having a really nice car
And never driving
worrying
it because
about,
it's too nice. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew N. Just wanted to say thanks for the great videos. I've been watching you guys for years, and it's all great. Thank you very much. Hopefully you're still watching. I know
Yes.
it's been a little bit of a while since we got to that comment, but thank you. Teflon, okay. Just want to make sure I didn't lose anybody here. Oh, yeah, there are a few. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm using OBS Studio, guys, just so you know how this is working. All right. So from Ragnar Kettler,
Okay.
I think I got that right.
Yep.
Whistle rockets. They can outperform almost anything at their size, but they don't scale up due to their limitations. But at your scale, they are optimal. Do you know anything about whistle rockets?
No, I mean, I've heard whistle-based, fireworks. Clearly, there must be some introduction of mass. One of the reasons, and I'm suspecting, I'm gonna guess here. You could look it up if you want to, while I'm kind of
Sure. Okay.
guessing here. But one of the limitations with engines like, say, the pulse detonation engine or a rocket engine is they have to carry all of the reaction mass with them. Propellers, jet engines, pulse jet engines, ramjet engines, anything that can harvest mass from the surrounding environment and then accelerate it to produce thrust is going to be more efficient because you're not having to carry the material, and at the same time you can leverage the velocity over a huge volume of air. That's why a propeller airplane is so much more efficient than, say, a turbojet, which is more efficient than, say, a ramjet, which is more efficient than, say, a rocket engine. So if the whistle jets incorporate a method of getting air into the flow, kind of like what we were trying to do with the augmenter with our jet engine, see if we can use some of the extremely high velocity air coming out of the rocket and convert it into moderate level velocity but much larger mass, you could increase the thrust. Maybe if I'm understanding this, I'm going to guess if a whistle rocket is similar to the augmenter.
I looked up whistle rockets, and I'm not finding anything that seems professional. They all seem very cheap and like toy-like. Like
Yeah, it's the underlying
know,
principle, but
yeah, but I could be getting something wrong. And if you want to comment back and give us like a more accurate, like a URL or something that you're talking about.
But if my
Because
description is accurate,
sure,
they
yeah,
have potential.
okay,
Despite our problems with our augmenters, the underlying principle is sound. It's just a matter of execution. So it may be that if we redesigned our augmenters or we built a whistle rocket around a particular engine, we could boost the thrust. The reason I suspect that your suggestion about scale is an issue is that rockets quickly move very quickly. They accelerate to a very high velocity rather quickly. And any of these augmentation techniques where you're taking the air from around it and trying to manipulate it in order to get thrust produces drag. And so it may be very quickly, after a few seconds, the rocket's already traveling fast enough that any gain from augmentation is going to be lost to air resistance, and that's why they don't do them.
okay. So we got another one from some guys, SR, whatever. Sorry, dude, but I can't. Will you ever do a follow-up on your old projects? Well, we just sort of talked about that. I don't know if you sent this earlier, but obviously, like with the drone thing, it didn't work out and it was too difficult. We might still do a follow-up on that, but we've also already done that sort of on some of the jet engine ones. So yes,
Like,
the
for
answer to that
example,
is yes, but it depends on what project you're talking about. There's some that we might not do because it's already been like flushed out, or there's something that we'll have to take time with, like maybe the Tesla catamaran. Maybe we'll take that out of storage and do another video with rocket engines on it or something. You know,
just
it's,
like
it's
a
possible.
great example is I showed a few years ago how to build your own jet engine at home. DIY jet engine from a turbo charger, an automotive turbocharger. Built the whole thing from scratch and went through all the design. That engine was great. It was useful, and there are some things that I might do to revisit that project. But now, several years later, we're doing videos on jet engines, a commercial jet engine, an RC jet engine, a pulse detonation. So sometimes we'll revisit a topic without necessarily revisiting the specific project. Sometimes, like with the drone, we'll just revisit the specific project. And what I said earlier on in the introduction to this live stream, we're going to be testing our supercooling paint that has been outside for environmental testing for the last year to see how it compares with the virgin material that's been kept inside. So we're going to revisit that one too.
Okay. We have another one here. I can't with these names.
Don't focus on that so much.
Well, it's kind of fun. Debashish. All right. Again, sorry if I butchered it. Will you ever do Velomobiles? Powered Velomobile ice or electric anything or hybrid with solar anything? Do you know what a Velomobile is?
I've got a weird memory of like something from like 1904. Was that like a steam-powered car or something? You could just look it up.
See, I'm not the one. Oh, that's interesting.
Is that pedaled? Oh, interesting.
Well, maybe I'm not sure if you are referencing this, but maybe you're referencing the bike with the fan on the back of it. If you guys haven't seen that,
Yeah.
because it's pedal powered, but then also has an engine on it.
Yeah, interesting.
Could it be related to that? I have no idea.
To answer the question that I think you were asking, or at least it stimulates this idea, is we are going to be revisiting the air-powered tricycle that we built about a year ago, where we used a Harbor Freight engine to drive a propeller, this thing right here that you can see coming up, and used it to drive around our warehouse, industrial park, as well as around town. And we had a blast with this thing, literally a blast. But it had some limitations. One is the amount of thrust produced by the engine and those 4 propellers was not a lot. It was about 18 kilograms. So substantially less thrust than our small little RC turbojet, and less thrust than our pulse jet. And it's also gasoline powered as opposed to electric powered. We could do almost anything with powering the propeller because we do have a platform for it. The problem was not the amount of speed or thrust that this thing could achieve because of the engine and the propeller. It was the stability of the vehicle. When it got up to relatively high speeds, we're talking, 40 kilometers per hour, 45 kilometers per hour, it started to get a little bit iffy. If you've noticed when people have tricycle motorcycles, there's always two wheels in front and one in back. This is sort of set up to do a flip over the handlebars kind of thing if you make abrupt turns at speed.
Yeah.
So Alex and I took an interesting trip, which is going to be in an upcoming video, for a much better vehicle for this purpose. And we're going to be showing you that video in the near future, but we've got a platform that would allow us to handle much more safely, much higher speeds, and would justify a more powerful electric fan or the jet engines.
Yeah.
Don't tell them too much.
No, I won't tell them too much. But just so you know, it was filmed a little while ago, so it's not a recent one. But the reason, there's a few reasons why we didn't post it. And I'm not going to tell them too much, but one reason we didn't post it is because it was very close to the last travel video that you guys might have seen, which was when we went down to SpaceX in Florida and we did some traveling there. We tried a Tesla, all that sort of stuff. And no one seemed to appreciate that video very much. And
they didn't dislike it, but it wasn't typical video.
Yeah, right. And so we thought to hold off on that video, and then it turned out there were a few different things about the people that we met in that video that we didn't contact back for some reasons. So we will still put that video out, but it'll probably be within the next, I don't know, month.
Okay.
Sometime within the next month. So you can see that there is a better platform to be able to mount something like that we have in this little tricycle.
Very lightweight, very low
Right,
resistance, something that is compatible because we could obviously put this on the back of a Prius. But, it's like, all right,
The only problem is, though, is it's a little bit pricey. So you might want to buy a different kind of bike from somewhere else. I don't want to get too much into it.
But the quality
and reveal
is
anything.
incredible, and so
Yeah, of
that
course,
may
of
be.
course. Yeah,
But let's not go any further on that one.
Okay. Right. I just don't want to get people's hopes up. All right. So next one. Make sure I don't miss anybody here.
Okay.
All right. Oh, okay. The Russian guy. Thank you very much. Okay. Have you dig into detonation turbo engine? Do you believe in that idea? There's a guy on YouTube who built a running POC, no measurements yet.
POC.
I don't know what POC. The detonation engine makes sense, but I don't know about lowercase o, capital C.
Don't know what the POC is, but basically, detonation is a means of combustion. So whether or not you do it by deflagration, subsonic, or detonation, supersonic, the underlying efficiency with which the fuel energy, the chemical energy, is converted into heat is the same. You don't gain any efficiency in the chemical reaction. You start out with oxygen and propane or hydrogen, you end up with water and carbon dioxide. The difference is your ability to extract work. That's often posted as the reason that you would want to work with a detonation engine. The other under sort of reported or less appreciated advantage is that in order to be able to burn your fuel at several thousand atmospheres with a detonation engine, you do not have to infuse your fuel into the chamber at thousands of atmospheres. That's a very practical advantage for purposes of rocketry, like I brought up before, but also in jet engines, if you don't have to compress the fuel to those enormous pressures for continuous burning. So a detonation burning process inside of a turbojet, instead of just the regular combustors where you're putting fuel in air and letting it get hot, is a potential very advantageous method of producing thrust. The one problem that you have is that the turbines that are trying to extract the energy would be operating in a detonation wave. And you can see what happened to SpaceX after the first couple of launches. You tear almost anything apart with a detonation. Take a look at some videos put out by Det Lab, DET. I believe, I forgot what university they're associated with. It's not MIT. But they'll do some short examples of detonation engines, similar to the one that we built. And you can see sparks and metal flying out of the end of the engine after 1 or 2 pulses. They're literally eating themselves up. And anything that you put in the way of that detonation wave, unless it's so far away that you lose all the efficiency, is going to be chewed up as well. So you're going to get your expensive turbine blades after a couple of minutes of operation probably having to be replaced. So the detonation burn could be a problem if it's interspersed inside of a working engine. A lot easier to do when the result or the thrust is just coming out of the end of the tube. So if that answers your question, hopefully that gives a little bit of background.
Yeah, okay. I have a few more here. I
Sure.
got a chat, though, from Jeff W. Sorry, guy, if I didn't see your questions.
Go ahead.
I'm using this weird chat thing on OBS. So I saw that you said that check out my questions. I don't have those questions. I don't know if you super chatted them before and somehow I missed them. So if something that you can do, if you can just like copy all your questions and just paste them into one message, I'll copy that. And you don't have to super chat it, just paste it there and I was lagged by 2 minutes live now. Okay, yeah, if you can just paste them in here, and I'll copy it and we'll respond to all of them at some point. So if you can do that, thank you. So let me go back to our most recent that we haven't responded to.
Okay.
Follow up on projects. This does feel, I have to say, guys, this does feel kind of pro, because we are actually responding to things. It's going well. We haven't had any glitches.
The power hasn't cut off yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
So that's really good. Okay, so from Bustin Bass, I like that name. With super capacitor improvements, will it be possible for a drone to auto route, recharging caps on its way down?
Yeah.
A porpoising. Sorry, what is a porpoising drone that goes forever?
Porpoising drone that goes up and down.
Porpoising drone that goes forever.
Well,
I don't know what that means.
they do have.
Proposing a drone that goes forever. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I might.
Well, it brings up
I
a
might be
couple of
stupid.
thoughts in my head. One is you might be aware of this. It's a water-based ROV. Some young kid came up with this idea. I don't know if, again, it was sort of like us where he read about it in some article and then he pursued it actually to a project that he got pretty famous on and might have even patented it. But it was to allow water-based ROVs to use thermal differences in the water to be able to sort of coast. They would take on water, become heavier. As they became heavier and sank through the water, they could literally fly using the glide principle and allow them to effectively move forward as they went down. Then they would blow out the water using a compressor or compressed gas, become light, go up to the surface, and repeat. Something similar might be possible in an air-based drone, but one of the things to keep in mind is that putting aside the issues of the numbers, the energy, the magnitude, which could obviously be the deal killer, is that a drone can't really turn off its rotors, or they become completely passive, or you'll lose control. They do need some lift and stability that comes from the drone, even if it's on a descent. You're still using power, much less, but you're using power. Would it be enough to be able to sort of then allow you to rise later on? Probably not. But like regenerative braking in cars, there's no reason why if you're at a high altitude and you want to get down, you necessarily have to bleed all that off into friction. You might be able to recap some of that energy or reduce the amount of energy that you're using while you're on the descent to give yourself more lifetime. I don't see how that would have anything to do with perpetual motion or I shouldn't say perpetual, but to be able to maintain an energy input that was equivalent to the output necessary in order to maintain flight. In that kind of a situation, more intriguing to look at lifting devices or lifting shapes like inflated wings or inflated paramotor wings that allow you to take much of the load off of a drone, and then you would be able to control the drone with a small engine just to move forward through the air.
Okay. I can give you another one while I'm answering. Jeff just responded with his question, so
Oh, good.
I'm getting
Okay.
those up. But let me go back up to. Oh, keep. I like this one a lot. So, thank you, Veluth. Thank you very much. Keep doing what you were doing. We also like the side conversations. See, I think that is a good thing. Like, no one likes.
No.
Can I say what I want to say? No one likes 100% like a lecture. They
Oh,
like
yeah.
a back and forth.
Oh,
and
right.
I always think that's a better way, even though maybe sometimes what I say is wrong or stupid or whatever. I think it's always good to like, I'm like questioning what you're saying. You can question me and we can talk about what people are saying to us and everything. I think that's like a really good mixture of things. And if guys, you don't agree, you can tell us here. But so far, it seems like you kind of agree that like it is good to have the back and forth and some interesting natural
speak
dialogue.
from some experience with being around like technological people and projects, bigger projects, or projects that aren't even related to what we do. And that is where you'd have a couple of graduate students, a couple of postdocs, you'd have a contractor, a hired contractor, a carpenter. And everybody would be sort of clustered around something that needed to be done. They needed to modify a room for an experiment or something. I learned more in that sort of back and forth communication between people with wildly different skill sets and wildly different knowledge bases that they don't always completely overlap. Like, the contractor might have another wisdom about building codes and safety, while the researcher just wants to get his laser operating. And as they're going back and forth, you learn a little bit about both fields. And I think that's the same thing that having like somebody to bounce off with. And the reason I want to have guests is because you can get somebody that's like really knowledgeable about something, but also surprisingly not knowledgeable about something. And when
that
the
you
two
can
you can
get back that
right, and
bounce ideas off of
right, and you
yeah.
come up. Sometimes you can come up when in these sort of like discussion sessions with ideas that neither person would have done alone. And so I think it's always useful to communicate, back and forth, even if sometimes it seems a little bit, I don't know, random or a little disjointed. It's still
that's better than staying on the same topic for 4 hours.
right. It just becomes it's too scripted, it's too tight, and again, it follows one person's idea of where they want to go.
Yeah,
But
right.
somebody throws in something from the side, and you're like, oh yeah, I never.
Jesus.
That's a good point. We should do that.
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll read this last question that we have here, and then I'll go to Jeff's questions that I didn't get for whatever reason. Oh, actually, wait a minute. You might have a third one. I'll deal with that.
Okay.
But okay. So Ragnar, I like that name as well. He's clarifying his whistle rockets. So whistle rockets, they are solid fuel, no nozzle, 300 grams of fuel. We're able to propel 1 kilogram of payload to 2 kilometers altitude, for example. Can be made with amateur equipment with dry pressed fuel.
No nozzle.
Says
That's
no
sort of-
nozzle. Yeah.
It sort of goes against the whole concept of energy capture because of the fact that you want the velocity. The back end of the engine, when you think about it, like if you build a long tube, no nozzle, a long tube, is a bit of a restrictor. If you get enough energy coming out of your fuel fast enough, you effectively do get some restriction just based on the overall size of the engine. But I would think it would be terribly inefficient as opposed to an engine that had a well-designed nozzle, because it's like 50% of the power that comes, or I think it's 50%. I think it could be 50% of the thrust comes from the nozzle, the actual hard bell shape or diverging cone. As the gases expand, they bounce off the cone, move backward. That gives you your momentum. If you don't have that, the high pressure gas is sort of expanding into the atmosphere, and that doesn't do anything for your thrust. So it surprises me that they would do that well, but now you got me wondering, because if they can do something other than just sit there and make a bunch of smoke and flame, but they can actually fly, then I've got something wrong, or there's something else going on there that's more subtle. I'm going to look into this, because now you got me thinking. Something doesn't make sense, and when it doesn't, that often means there's an assumption you're making that's wrong, and I think I might be making bad assumptions here. So I'll look into it.
Okay. So let's finally get to Jeff's questions.
Poor Jeff.
Yeah, poor Jeff. I don't feel like I'm sorry that we missed your questions, but I'm not sure if you did the super chats, because I was trying to be very careful with like not missing any super chats, and we didn't have time to read like some of the other chats. I tried like a few times to get some of your comments in, but so many of these comments are it takes a long time and they're very complicated, so we can't get to everybody. And Kaysen will respond to you afterwards too. Don't worry that like after it fades off we'll forget you. So Jeff W. Okay, so your first question was, okay, first time question or long time viewer since distilled episode. Okay, interesting. My first question is beam splitting the laser to fiber optic cables to other gimbals with 2 cameras, 1 wide view to vocal.
I'm assuming 1 wide view to 1 narrow view, probably. I mean, comparatively.
Right.
Yeah.
It says vocal, though. I copied it. Yeah. Okay.
Beam splitting a laser into 2 fibers is not difficult to do. I think Edmund Optics, if you go to their sales site, but you don't have to, have tutorials on how to couple a laser into a fiber optic fuel, or the entrance port. It's not trivial, but it isn't difficult. There's also another gentleman that has a very small channel, but does some pretty sophisticated work, Lee's Lab, L-E-E'(S), Lee's Lab.
Well, would you prefer me to be on Edmund or
neither one? I don't think you have to go to
care?
either one. You can go to Lee's Lab because he's another YouTube creator, so I always like that.
But you do use Edmund optics.
I do
all
use
the
Edmund.
time.
I order a lot of optics from them. Excellent company, but they also have tutorials on how to launch. If you're taking a laser and you want to launch it into a fiber optic, and you want to split it, you want 2 fiber optics to be powered by the same laser, it's not difficult to do. Some lasers are polarized, and if they are polarized, then if you put a polarizing filter or beam splitter in front of them, you can send that polarized beam wherever you want to go, but you've got just 1 polarization. So wherever you send it, you still got 1 beam. If you have a laser that is unpolarized, then you can split the beam by splitting the 2 polarizations. So you get your S and your P polarizations, and you can send them wherever you want and focus them into fibers. That's relatively trivial. You can also use beam splitters that essentially just take half of the power. So whether it's polarized or not, you can place a beam splitter in front of a laser, and you can produce 2 output beams of varying relative intensity. So the obvious simple one would be 50-50. You send half your energy one way, half the other. Focusing it down to a point smaller than the diameter of the fiber. There's some details about like how fast you can do that and how much of a cone you can form. And again, the tutorials will help you with that. But ultimately, you could end up with 2 fiber outputs that could then independently be launched into lenses in order to recreate the beams or to move them to another location, maybe very, very far away. The problem you'll have is most fiber optics to be effective are very, very small fibers. They're on the order of the size of a human hair. And so you need a quality laser beam that can be focused down to smaller than that diameter in order to get in the end. And so beams like from the lasers that we showed you in the previous video on cooking the burger or on destroying the balloons and the moving targets, these are not particularly high quality laser beams. They're very powerful, very cost effective, and at reasonable distances produce extremely intense outputs. But they can't be focused down to 20, 30 microns in terms of spot size. They're a bad choice for launching into a fiber. There are much better choices for launching into a fiber. You get the fiber too big and it won't send the beam where you want it to go. It'll just bleed out the sides. You get the fiber too small, you can't get the energy into it, and it gets rather complicated. So bottom line is you got to couple the right laser to the right fiber. You got to kind of know some of the techniques of doing it, and then when you get your output, you can handle the outputs independently of each other.
Okay, second question from Jeff. How about a mini or micro build of a jet engine to be used for drones? Probably not a jet engine, but since he already, we both were dealing with just using a generator to generate the electrical power for the electrical motors to run. If you use a jet engine, you can't really use it in one direction. If you did, then the other motors would have to take over. You could put it theoretically on each rotor, but then you can't control it quite as well.
There are some old rotors that actually had jets at the tips. Okay,
yeah, that's why they're old.
That's why they're old. But drones aren't necessarily always hexacopters or octocopters.
Sure.
Drones can be like Global Hawk. They can actually be airplanes, and basically what that would describe is an RC, jet-powered RC aircraft.
Yeah, and technically they are drones, but they're not drones in the traditional consumer sense. They're the military-grade sense, because you're treating it more like a small airplane or a small helicopter, and you're using the jet engine to power everything or to push it forward. And then you're using the drone capabilities as you're electronically controlling the flaps or something like that.
Right.
But in reality, it's you could, if you were able to mount a cockpit on there and have a person in there, you'd be able to have it fly manually. But if you take that away, then you're doing it remotely. But you're just remotely flying an aircraft. It's not quite what a drone is supposed to be.
Right.
You know,
Well,
you understand like what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying, and the reason, like, I'm kind of intrigued by the idea is, like, maybe you are familiar, I'm not.
Jeff.
Jeff, if you're familiar with this, but you can set up a hexacopter like a Mavic or, you know, one of these, and you can just say hover, and it'll just hover there. Uses GPS, uses its own internal gyroscopic stabilization, and it can just hover and stay flat. And you don't have to have any input. You're still on the controls, but if you just let go of them, it will stay there. I don't know if you can get, say, an RC aircraft, whether it's propeller-powered or jet-powered, but it's a fixed-wing aircraft. If you can get that with the software and control hardware that would allow you to say, go to 1,000 feet and just, 300 meters, and just begin running a circle. Just keep going around until you run out of fuel. I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if they have that kind of capability. I would be surprised that somebody hasn't done that, because it seems like it would be a relatively easy thing to do.
Yeah, the only thing is, and I have thought about that, because I've thought about like long-range drones, because obviously using multiple propellers and everything, and they're using that to go forward, you don't have much range because you're using only battery power, and it's not getting any lift from any wings or anything like that.
All your power just to hover is a lot.
Yeah, right. But then you're using that to also go forward.
Right.
So at the max, I think it's like 40 minutes, maybe 50 minutes if you're lucky. But with military drones / fixed wing drones, you can get a lot more range because it's like a traditional plane. You're getting the lift from the wings.
Right.
And but the only thing is, though, yeah, I haven't seen anything where they have the same capabilities of DJI drones,
Right.
where you can have it do some GPS signaling. It can auto home. It can
It could
do all that.
land.
So land, whatever you could think of.
Right.
I haven't seen that before.
And
They should do that.
if you could do, and I have a suspicion I know why, and
because it's too useful.
it's potentially too useful to combatants.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I brought up in my previous video about the laser that we had fired up here, where we were destroying some balloons, and where we're going from there is that RC aircraft are potentially, could be weaponized. And if you could, produce an RC type of aircraft, but it's powered by a drone, that potentially might be something that they've been discouraged from selling. That would be one of my suspicions why you don't see this that often. There's another requirement theoretically, and that is when you're flying an RC aircraft, you're always supposed to be in visual contact with the aircraft. And you definitely have to be, because obviously it's not on autopilot. But they move fast, and so they're flying around a field, and you're constantly doing this. There wouldn't be a lot of advantage to say hover, maintain, the pattern, as if you're going to land, maintain that. There isn't a lot of value to doing that on something that you've still got to be watching constantly as it's going around in circles. It doesn't really provide much value. If you're going to fly it as a, FPV, if you're going to fly it at a distance and you're not going to be seeing the actual aircraft, that's where that issue about potentially the military application and the risks might discourage them from doing it.
No, I have to disagree with you on that because they do have that, but it's only local. So you do have FPV versions of DJI where you can look through the goggles and do all that sort of stuff. It's the long range thing that's the issue.
Right, and
it can hover, doesn't matter.
Right.
Going fast doesn't matter. Being able to see it through your goggles, being able to see the ground in detail,
right?
None of that matters.
As if you're in the cockpit.
It's the long range thing,
right?
That is,
I think you're right, but you'd probably need both. But it's the long range that would make the difference.
Right.
Yeah,
got it.
Oh, and then finally, a jet engine. Sure, you could throw a jet engine on a fixed wing aircraft without any problem. There's channels all over the place where people are doing this all the time, and so definitely that could be jet powered.
Okay. So we'll go to and Jeff. I know you've sent a bunch of messages, and we'll get back to you. But let me get to someone else first. So Kaysen asked, as a physician, any plans to do any videos based on medical science?
No.
Ever? Because you did do the COVID videos, which I don't know. We can't talk about that, but
we did the sort of how to protect yourself, PPE and all that kind of thing, and I thought that was worth sharing because I think the community was in need, and I thought that was something where I felt kind of obligated, and I was currently practicing as a physician at that time. But there's a couple reasons. Number one, I love what we do here. I enjoy this. If this wasn't fun, we wouldn't do it. And doing medical issues is a little bit like work. So it's not like that interesting to me to kind of just rehash medical stuff. The other issue is medical liability, because one of the major things you learn, whenever you're learning how to become a doctor, one of the major things you learn is never diagnose without seeing the patient. And if you don't know what you're doing, get references, get tests, get second opinions, get advice. If I go out and I start giving medical opinions about things that turn out not to be applicable to somebody who's watching, am I doing harm rather than good? At first, do no harm. Not sure about that. I can't control where this information goes or how somebody interprets it. It could be my fault because I present it badly. It could be their fault because they come in with some bias or some misunderstanding about some term I use or something like that, and somebody gets hurt. I'd rather they go to see a physician or go to see a nurse or a nurse practitioner, or whoever they have that's their caregiver, that can lay hands on and see them directly and respond to their questions in a timely way if something goes south. So I really don't think we're going to do that.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. And one thing, Jeff, Jeff, dude,
Jeff,
like, I like.
is
this
he putting
our,
in more questions, or are you still trying to get through his original list?
our original list?
Okay.
So I'm using 2 computers here now, and this is our second live stream. Just like you gotta know, like, dude, this is not an easy thing. This is not
We
an
just
easy
make it
thing for
look
us to
easy.
do. Yeah, it doesn't even. I doubt it looks easy. I'm not going to read what he said. Well, I can read it. Okay. So I'll read it, and I'm not pissed about it or whatever. So he said, unfortunately, it's tough to communicate as you're only looking at super chats. Okay. I understand that we're not like looking
True.
at all the other chats, but we have so many, and I'm glad about that. Like, I'm not pissed at you guys like, oh, how dare they chat at us. Yeah, no, it's fine. Like, I love your chats and everything. And if I had more time, or if we had 4 more people, I would totally like respond to every single chat that we have here. But if we did that, we would we'd be at 10 o'clock tonight, and I probably
Still not
wouldn't still not get through every single one of your guys' chats. So I understand, like, you might have a question, and it might be a simple thing, like you're asking about a link or something like that. And it's like, I get it. I get it. But just understand, this is our second one. We're not a pro channel. We don't have other people looking over our chats. So that's why I tried to make sure, because I didn't see your chats before. That's why I tried to bring them up, and I did answer. We did answer 2 of yours. We still have a second one about your laser split fibers one, and I copied and pasted. And I saw that you said something about the character limit, but that's YouTube doing that. It's not us. I'm just letting
Sure.
everybody know. So
Well,
so it's like,
I'll phrase it this way. Number one, I say I read all the comments. So what's going to happen, even though these comments will not be useful, in the future, if you have comments that relate to a particular video that's stimulating your thought, put it in the comment section, and tonight, tomorrow, next day, I'll see them all. And so I can definitely respond to a question if I haven't addressed it here. The live chat, the super chats work as a filter, just like, if we get 20,000, how do you choose, a good one? And theoretically, the idea would be, if somebody really wants to know an answer badly enough that they super chat, that's probably something that they really care about and they're really focused on and would like an answer to. So we'll focus on that as a filter. That's really kind of the major reason we're doing it that way. But put your questions in a comment related to the most pertinent video. I'll get to it.
yeah, and I just saw Jeff again respond. Understood. It's so tough to give a question in 180 characters.
It's hard,
yes.
It's hard to answer, too.
yeah. Well, yeah. If we were answering in the same, at least I don't really have to answer unless it's focused at me.
Right.
But yeah, that's why we're talking, and we can. But we're trying to get to everybody, and I understand. Like, you might have some really good questions, and I'm trying to get to them. Okay. So, I think the best way to go about this is, you can. No, you don't have to donate, dude. No, thank you. That's really nice. That's really nice for you to do that. But you don't have to do that. And that's also, just so you know, I have these 2 computers here. So I have one laptop set up over here, so I can see the live stream not signed in. So I'm getting what you guys are getting, and then I have my main computer that is getting what we're getting. So they're a little bit off. So you are getting a little bit of a delay. So I don't always see it on this main computer. I'm seeing it sometimes on this computer, and that I'm trying to do the best that I can here.
What is the?
So Jeff understood. Yeah, question to only 180 characters with more in depth. Yeah, I get it. trying to think of if there's a beta. Well, do it multiple times, and maybe instead of like 9.90, if you want to make it a super chat, and I understand like not wanting to pay money. That's totally fine, dude. But if there's other people doing super chats, we have to focus on them first. So if if you want an answer to your question, maybe you could do 3 questions and split the amount that you're putting it there. I don't know. I'm new to this, but I'm just thinking that might be the best way to do it. And we got Richard. Thank you for your comment. I'm not I'm not gonna reply to that because that's making fun of Jeff a little bit. But
No.
but
No,
Jeff,
no.
I'm not pissed at you at all. That's totally fine. And I actually really like this because it does make us feel a little bit more pro where we're talking to you like, hey, Richard, Jeff, stop talking about each other.
Right. No, get it.
No, it's fantastic.
But like I said, good
oh,
spirits. We're trying to do our best, and
Yeah,
if as time goes on, we'll probably get a bit smoother with this. At the same time, if we have a guest or we have somebody here, either Zoom or directly, that will also make Alex's job a little bit easier, where he can just be focusing while we're discussing something, and maybe we'll be a little more efficient with our reading of comments and filtering them through. We don't have moderators either. So that'll all help. We'll get better.
And
we'll get better.
we might get moderators and everything. But yeah, how he said, it is a little bit difficult because I'm looking at 2 monitors right now, trying to monitor chats and everything, and also talk at the same time to him and bring up some ideas.
Right.
And I had some. Yeah, okay. All right. So let's get back into it. We'll probably stay on here for another...
An hour?
That'd be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys want to maybe slow down a little bit, whatever, ask some questions more about either the videos or whatever else you want to ask about.
Well, while you're looking at that, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting, maybe people will be interested in sort of our footprint. When we first started doing this channel about 11 years ago, it was just a repository for some videos that I was doing as I was trying to share projects that I was doing for an online forum called Laser Pointer Forums for DJI and postdocs and amateurs and hobbyists in lasers. And you build something, you were successful and you wanted to show it off, or it's not working and you wanted somebody's input. We found that the most efficient way to do that was to actually make just a short video clip and then share it with the other forum members, and they could get back to you. And that's how we sort of got into the idea of posting videos. And because we got so much interest from people who were not part of the forum group, the target audience of this video that you thought would be seen by 8 people were seen by 8,000 people, we got a lot of questions that were sort of interesting questions that were outside of that limitation. And that's why we started doing the videos. We started, if you go very, very early on in our history, it's almost all about lasers, building DJI lasers and working with lasers, because that's sort of what originated the plan. But over the years, I've done projects on building large observatory telescopes, built my own airplane, built boats, did all kinds of stuff as hobby projects for a long time, learned a fair amount of information, and then decided that, a lot of these other projects are going to be more interesting to people than another one on a laser pointer. And so that's why we then evolved into a much larger channel that covers a much broader topic. Well, a much broader field of topics. Well, early on, you'll see all of our videos came out of our barn laboratory next to our home. And then over the last few years, you'll notice that many of our videos, not all of them, are now coming out of this warehouse where our studio is located. And it was kind of an interesting adventure because Alex went ahead and found this warehouse and this location.
Yep.
And we're not going to get into the exact details of where it is, but the bottom line was he was sort of looking at the fact that we needed a lot more space. We couldn't keep working out of the same location. And so now that we have grown to the point that we have projects, like you can see sitting in the background behind me, that we don't necessarily have to store and disassemble. We can keep them out. We can move them around. We can use them. We're actually beginning to fill up this warehouse.
Well, we are. And can I interrupt for a
Sure.
second? Because we have, obviously, what is that?
We mean the tornado chamber.
Yeah, tornado chamber. We've got the jet engine table. We've got the blast shield for the jet engine table.
Yeah.
We also have
2 layers of bulletproof glass.
Yeah, yeah, that'll do it. We have the boat, which we haven't used in any videos yet. But we will. What else do we have that they can see in the background? Probably nothing.
Well, the other stuff is, like, for example, your 3D
behind
printer,
here.
which is
Yeah,
upstairs.
that's upstairs. It used to be over here, but you can't see that, so.
Yeah, one thing you don't see in this warehouse, which is kind of interesting, is the former tenants made vape products, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
they did.
it's weird, but the color schemes around here are pretty
They're
weird.
purple.
They're
They're purple.
bright purple.
Yeah.
And so it does look a little bit sketchy, like, in terms of some of the offices and everything in front. And there's really, we don't care, so we don't repaint the thing. But it is kind of interesting what was here before to what's here now. We have the warehouse space. They were using primarily the office spaces. But it's an interesting transition because as we've grown, we've decided that we needed more room. And just like with, any home, no matter how big it is when you start, pretty soon you still end up feeling a little bit tight for space.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. We have a totally different question, but
Okay.
a totally different topic.
Okay.
So from Corey Newton,
All right.
he asked, and actually, before even if I go into his thing, no, everybody's just talking about Jeff and other people. Okay, so Corey Newton, $5. The wife was a huge fan of your hard cider. Do you happen to have a plum wine recipe? I need to keep her happy or she gets mad.
Well,
Or
if you've
mean,
got to
sorry,
wait,
mean.
you've got to wait. You probably should go to your local liquor store and you can pick up some pretty good plum wine, and then you can say you made it. But no, I never advocate being untruthful. It is a very good idea. I don't know much about plum wine. One of the nice things about it is it doesn't obviously involve distillation, which makes things a lot more approachable. You don't need a lot of equipment for it. And I really like plum wine, like that one restaurant that we go to where we get the plum wine.
Yes,
It's,
yeah.
It's
It is
actually
really good.
very
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah.
It was a little sweet, but I'm sure it comes in a variety of, different levels of sugar and
It's not
the rest of
harsh,
it.
though, or
But
anything.
I will. I'll look into it. I might not do it, but if I do, it's because of your question.
Very good. Okay. I think that's pretty much it for the questions right now. We got some hate from one person, and sorry, dude. Like I don't know why
Don't
you're
get into
so
the
mad to
don't
us,
get into
but-
mad stuff.
No,
Yeah.
no. I of course I just don't know why. But it's fine. Thank you for commenting. It's totally fine. It's up to you. And again, this is our what day is it? Second time doing this. Yeah. So just to be a little bit.
So just like SpaceX plans to catch their 5th booster, our next podcast will probably have a guest. So that will be kind of interesting.
It might be better.
And like I said in the beginning, if you just tuned in, you didn't get near the beginning, because we want to have guests and because of the fact that we want to keep these discussions out of politics, religion, personal information, we're going to stay in science, engineering, and technology. We're going to reach out to a number of content creators on channels that we follow actively and really enjoy, and find out if any of them would be interested in participating in an online, discussion or even a in-person discussion here at the Warehouse Studios. So that is what our plan is for the next live stream, and hopefully it'll be relatively soon. But I think that will be kind of fascinating. And so please, if you have somebody that you think would be interesting, you follow them, you like them, and you would like to see us reach out to them, put it in the Twitter, on the Twitter page as a comment there. and we'll read through all of them, and we might find a couple that are not on our list already.
Yeah, the only thing is I rethought about this a little bit. If you have someone to suggest, the only Twitter might be a good option. But you would have to pick a specific Twitter post, and we have multiple posts. You might send us an email at techingredients@gmail.com. But if you do decide to send an email to us there about someone that, like a guest that we're going to have on, make the subject line guest.
That's a very good idea, because how many do you get a day?
Billion.
Yeah, something close.
Close to a billion.
Yeah.
So I would, you can do the Twitter route. But
Do it
we
both if you want.
Yeah, do both. Do
Yeah, just
both.
paste it to both.
Yeah, it's easier to
Yeah.
do both. But definitely Gmail, techingredients@gmail.com. And you can, I think you can find that email address in, like, when you go to our account on YouTube, you should be able to find that. But if you send it and you put the subject line guest, we'll look at that and we'll see what who's the most popular guest that everybody recommends.
Right, and somebody that's interested. Even people that we like
Sure.
maybe don't want to
Or don't know of.
Yeah, or we don't know of.
Yeah.
So I really think that would be useful, because I do think having multiple people involved would be very interesting for me. I would enjoy talking to people that I follow all the time and ask them,
Yeah.
what did you do when this thing went wrong? Or, what was your favorite video? Or, what's coming up next or something? I think that would be fascinating.
Okay, actually, I have a question. This is on topic, but we didn't discuss this. What would you think about, like, say we did a Zoom call, guys? We did a Zoom call, but you had multiple people, like even Jeff here, like he could join or whatever.
Yeah, like Critical Drinker does with Nerdtronic, and a couple of these other with
I
like
don't watch
movie
him, but-
reviewers that, like, they'll get 6 of them to review a movie,
Okay.
and they're all like little
Sure. Okay.
thumbnails on a post.
But we get 3 to 6 people, and it's us two, maybe Paul, something like that. And we talk with these 6 people, and we can sort of mute, unmute, and we go between people, and we discuss topics or something science related, not political, not any religious, anything.
I think it's perfect. I don't know if I would do it as the next video, because it's
I
like,
definitely
there's a
wouldn't. No,
learning
no.
curve.
Yeah.
And as we get a little bit more comfortable
Yeah.
with this, it might become relatively trivial to have 2 guests.
Then 5,
and then
then
5
6,
and
and
6.
Yeah, I got it.
Plus, if we do this on a regular basis, let's say we did this every other week or something like that. Say we did it that often, we could have a lot of guests within a few months. So we'll sort of see how that flows and what the level of interest is. We may have a lot of people that are interested in participating. We may have very few. That also might have the effect. We don't want to keep somebody that we'd really like to talk to waiting for 4 or 5 months to see a video, or we're trying to put them back to back or something like that. So
Yeah, I agree.
we'll play it by ear, but that's the plan.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Okay. Yeah, no, I got it. All right. Let me make sure. Yeah, we got the wife one. Very good. Okay, so we got, good God. OBS is kind of annoying sometimes. Okay, so from Iowa and Papa.
Okay.
I think that's right. Just wanted to say, I love the channel. It's my favorite on YouTube. Do you have an email address that I could send a private invite to you all? So if the invite, I just mentioned the email address. If the private invite is for like a barbecue dinner or something, we might.
I mean, I'm up for barbecue, but
we won't necessarily invite you here. That's the only thing. But it sounds interesting. It's if we're in Iowa, and I assume it's Iowa, or it's Io and Papa. I don't know, but I'm doing my
Papua New
best here.
Guinea.
Yeah, right.
But I think with your email address that you gave,
Yes.
just email us.
Yeah, exactly. And then Jeff, thank you very much for saying for them to stop trolling us at chat. We are moving on. Thank you very much. You did a good job there. Ragnar, okay. The fuel is so reactive, it would explode with any nozzle. I will comment later for your reading example of... It's complicated. Yeah, do you want to go over that?
Yeah. Basically, what you're talking about is...
And you can read it.
It's basically like using sort of a bullet and a rifle without the barrel. Effectively, you're just sort of explosively launching something, producing a pulsed pressure wave behind it, pushing it up. So all the velocity is sort of accumulated at the origin point. It's interesting. I think was it Fledermaus or who was the channel that recently looked at rocket bullets? There was one of the shooting channels
Oh,
that
you
was
mean
talking about the rocket propelled bullets.
Those are very old.
And yeah, but I
Very
mean,
old, yeah.
but basically it's the same like principle where effectively instead of using the compression inside the tube to force the bullet forward, you're actually creating a reactive thrust in the bullet to have it move forward. I could see how you might be able to do something like that where it's basically like putting a firecracker underneath a tin can and popping it up into the air. I could see how that would work, and you could scale that. I could see why you would not be able to scale it too far because unless, what is it, Project Orion? Wasn't that the one? Yeah, I think it was.
don't know.
To travel to the stars. How do we do it with nuclear engines? And it's like, yes, you could build leaky tokamaks and fusion-based engines, or you could use a water-based reactor or something thermal. But one of them was, and this was back like in the 50s or 60s, that you would literally blow up nuclear bombs behind a huge reflector at the back of your spacecraft.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's Project Orion.
Okay.
And they would then just blow these things up every couple of seconds and kick them away. And the idea was that we didn't have the ability to control nuclear fusion or nuclear fission. It was just blow it up or not. So how could you use that blast wave in order to propel something? And if you're in space, radiation really isn't an issue because you're just putting it into the stars. So that may be part of the way that that particular rocket works, is that you just produce a blast and push the thing up into the air. Interesting. Probably loud. Maybe that's why they call it a whistler.
Okay. Next one from Richard Hammond. I wish it was Richard Hammond. No offense.
Who, chipmunk or what was it? Hamster.
Hamster. I love Hamster. He
Yeah,
was always
right.
good. And he also, did you ever, I have to interrupt. Did you ever see him go to the top of White Mountain, Mount Washington?
Oh,
the
you mean the
observatory?
winds or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
No,
Did
I
you
never
ever
did.
See that?
No.
He went there.
I haven't
So
seen
you
him.
guys should-
I've seen
Jeremy Clarkson.
Clarkson's farm,
Clarkson.
and then James May has done a few sort of travel around videos,
Like Japan and stuff.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen really anything with the hamster.
Yeah,
Hammond, yeah.
the hamster. God, he must hate that.
Yeah.
Okay. So Richard Hammond. Unless it's Harmon. Okay, it's either Harmon or Hammond. My text here isn't great. What failed experiment had the most interesting result? That's a good question. I like
that was actually a question
It's
I was going to
really
ask
good
a
question.
guest when they come. Like, what projects, did you learn the most from, or what project did we never see because things went completely sideways? Let me think for just a sec.
I really like that question, though. That's a top-notch
I'm trying
question.
to think. That is because there have been a few, and I'm trying to think of one that would strike a.
Harmon.
Oh yeah.
It is Harmon.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's Richard Harmon. Sorry, dude.
Okay, I want to give this a fair shot. Let
So
me
you
let
do-
the brain work on this.
Okay,
Give me something
do
else.
that. Yeah, do that. Yeah. Okay. Zoom talking sick. That's fine. Thank you. It's him again. Doesn't matter. Okay. We can skip, but this one's not going to be much easier.
Well, let's try it. Maybe
All
it is.
right. So, artificial muscles from over-twisted nylon filament, inexpensive and cool for robotics applications. Look for papers from Spinks and Bogman.
How do you spell that?
The papers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Papers from Spinks, so SPINKS,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
Bogman, so BAUGHMAN.
Okay. I know that there are artificial muscles that you can use metal There are certain types of metals that actually, under magnetic fields or under thermal conditions, can bend and recover their shape. And I know that there are composite materials that they're doing that with. I didn't know that nylon would respond to that. And what the question would be is, what is the stimulating what is the stimulating property? What turns them on? Nylon absorbs water, so with water absorption, it will get longer. It'll stretch. Heat probably would do it. I suspect because it's a plastic, but I would think its response rate would be extremely low because you obviously have to heat all the fibers and then they have to dissipate their heat when you're trying to undo it. Electrically actuated or magnetically actuated would be the way to go for something robotic that has to move at any kind of practical speed. But I will look at the articles because there may be some doping. They add something to the nylon. It's not just pure nylon that gives them other properties. I suspect that may be involved. Or, like you said, the overstretched, maybe they change their crystal function and they become more like a liquid crystal, which can be responsive to electrical fields or even magnetic fields, or more likely chemical. Some chemical can be applied and they'll shrink or they'll expand. I'll look into it. This is easy, and thanks for the article. I'll take a look.
Yeah, no, Slow, Missouri was, I think that was the one that was from Slow, Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so do you want to go back to the more complicated one?
Nope. I'm still thinking.
Well, can't think forever, but I understand. I understand it's a hard one. And let me copy it though, just so we don't lose it.
Yeah.
So not the nozzle ones. Guys, yeah, you have to understand that this is not fun.
Oh, got one.
Yeah, most failed experiment. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. The reason that I'm going to sort of say this in quotes, failed, is that I haven't given up yet. But it has been, so far, not working. Are you familiar, or if you ever heard of active armor? This typically means...
Reactive armor.
Reactive armor.
Reactive armor, yeah.
Well,
I actually, can I interrupt? I think most people here would probably know what he's talking about just because of the Ukraine situation and everything, and how it's not worked and why it's been a discussion so much.
Right.
So, yeah.
Reactive armor is the way it basically works is that you can keep making tanks or aircraft or some vehicle with thicker and thicker armor plating to get it to survive more and more penetrating types of weapons. And eventually it becomes so heavy you can't move it, or it's too expensive to transport it or even to manufacture it. And so the idea with reactive armor is that as the projectile is inbound, but before it's struck the vehicle, if you can do something to disrupt its flight path or disrupt the actual projectile and turn it into, particles or smaller fragments, you can reduce the amount of armor that you need below to protect it. And this is potentially very, very useful because the reactive armor is so unreactive that unless it's hit by a supersonic shell or it's hit by a shaped charge, liquid coming from the front of an armor-piercing shaped charge, they don't detonate. So they're relatively safe to transport and store. The problem is they're still relatively heavy, and you have to coat your entire vehicle with it. There is a type of armor that was very intriguing to me because of that leak that they had experienced. I don't know if it was on the space station or one of the spacecraft going to resupply it, but it was hit by a micrometeorite, and very, very small grain of material, the size of a grain of sand, moving at Mach 25 or Mach 30 can have a devastating effect. It'll cut through your structure like butter or produce a plasma when it hits the surface, and that will burst through your structure. And there aren't very many of them, but they're around. And so because of the weight limitations on a spacecraft, it would be really difficult to protect yourself from these micrometeorites. I had read a long time ago about the idea of electrically actuated armor, where effectively you take two metal plates and you separate them by a dielectric, could be a piece of plastic, something that doesn't conduct. And you charge the plates relative to each other. So basically, what you've built is a capacitor. As long as the plates have the insulating material between them, nothing happens. You maintain that potential, and it'll stay there as long as you don't have resistance or some other losses in your system. So the amount of power necessary to keep the, quote, plates charged is microscopic. It's very small. However, when a projectile or a particle tries to penetrate, what it does is it makes the dielectric material between them fail. And now you have a short between the two plates. Excuse me. That short is a current path, and the energy that is dumped into that very small area is enormous, and it's extraordinarily fast. We're talking a couple microseconds, sub-microsecond, faster than the particle can transverse the distance. The energy released in that is diffuse, it's heat, and it would boil away or turn your projectile into plasma before it gets past the other plate. Therefore, what goes through the other side is like high-velocity gas or nothing. Now, the weight advantage is that this could be made out of aluminum foil and some plastic wrap or copy paper, something that just keeps that insulated. And the surface area can be as large as you can manufacture. I can't hear myself.
You can't?
No.
I can.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for whatever reason, I can't hear myself.
At all?
Well, you're working on that. Bottom line is, I tried to build one of these devices using some of the very, very high-powered capacitors that we have for some of our early laser experiments, and tried firing a projectile. It was actually a pellet gun, and it worked. It actually completely destroyed the pellet and didn't have much of an effect on the back surface. But the one thing that I did notice is that once you obviously produce the pulse and you penetrated, you now have a shorted out plate and you no longer have your protection. So it's good for one shot. I've got some ideas about how to potentially make this work so that you'd have multiple layers of protection so that you don't lose it with your first micrometeorite. But that was the project that kind of taught me the most about the potential of something that really, as far as I know, hasn't been described and may have a lot of utility to protect astronauts and anybody who is in an environment where very, very small but very, very high velocity particles may hit them. Would it be as useful on the ground? Don't know. Maybe, the weight advantage isn't worth it. But in space, I think it may have some very significant advantages.
Okay. That was really nice. Everybody can still hear you, though, so
Good.
Don't worry about
Okay.
that. So it doesn't look like we don't have any new ones, except for we have thanks from Lord Garth. Thank you very much. Thanks, gentlemen. I look forward to more of these lives and the new videos. Thank you, Parshav. Thank you, Patel. Thank you very much.
And I think we're going to
and I think
focus on the Saturdays. We're going to stick
definitely
with
the
Saturdays.
at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Eastern Standard Time in the U.S.
So that's something for you to keep your eyes open for in the future. If you're thinking, I wonder if they put something up, focus on the Saturdays.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I think we've been on for about 3 hours now. A little over 3 hours.
Hasn't felt like it.
Okay.
It's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Okay. No, I definitely enjoyed it too. But unless if you guys want to get some of your last questions in,
Yeah, we'll sign off in like 10 minutes or so. Just give people a
something
last
like that.
chance.
I'll look at some of these non-super chats that we have here. It can't do anything too complicated. It's got to be quick questions. See if there's anything here. And actually, you know what? You can look at this.
All right.
I can bring this closer to you, and you can decide what you want to look at. So it's everything on that side.
Yeah. All right, I'm good.
I get them a little quicker than he does on that laptop, but it's not a big difference. Is blanks. What does that say? I don't know what that means. Yeah, it's a little bit complicated.
Oh, one question that was asked here.
Yeah.
The system that I was talking about, the sort of space flight armor system, the power requirements are minimal. We're talking the energy that I used in that capacitor was about 10,000 joules, which is probably far more than is necessary, but I had the capacitor, so why not? But no, the amount of energy necessary would be almost zero unless it's fired upon. And when it is, you'd have to reinvest another 10,000 joules, 5,000, don't know what the threshold is, in order to get the protection system back up. So the amount of energy required is minimal.
Your mic is off.
Oh, sorry. Could everybody hear what I just said?
No.
You couldn't?
That's
My mistake. Okay.
Yeah, and I
By
was
leaning
thinking,
forward.
It took me a second. I was thinking, like, wait a minute, why does it sound like he's right next to me?
Just to summarize, the power requirements are minimal. I used more than I probably need, and in order to be able to determine what's actually going to be needed is I got to get an operational system going, and then I can start to ramp down and find out what's just enough to make it work.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I see that. That's the thing when we spend so long doing one of these things, and also the delay with chats
exactly.
and everything. You don't realize that, like, the mic is off. Like, we have to fix that.
Right.
So,
We're going to need another bottle of water. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
that'll do.
If there are no more questions, I think maybe what we can do is maybe sign out and we'll
Yeah. I
save
think
the
we're
topics
good.
for next time. Yeah, I feel good.
Yeah, and maybe next time we'll have a guest. It might be my brother, might be Paul that could be on here, or it'll be someone else, or it'll just be us again, and maybe we'll have some topics. You should always make sure you check the Twitter page because we always put updates to when we're going to be scheduling a live stream, and we also put polls up there. So if we have a selection of either things to talk about or guests or something like that, it'll probably be up there for you guys to
even
ask
though
about.
I said Saturdays, that's for scheduled. But let's say, for example, some event happened tomorrow, some big event that involves a lot of technology and science.
Theoretically,
and we want to
yes.
cover it not
Yeah.
a week from now or 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
We'll post any kind of like, hey, there's going to be a live stream
That's possible,
suddenly scheduled.
Yeah.
Unlikely, but again, it benefits to just kind of keep a little bit of a loose eye on it.
Yeah, I would just follow the Twitter thing because we'll always post on Twitter or X now that we're going live at blank time on blank day.
Okay.
So,
well, I'm good.
Yeah, I thought that
Thanks,
was really
everybody.
fun.
I appreciate your watching. It was it's a lot of fun, and this is why we do it, because it's fun.
Yeah, and I'm not upset with anybody who had any issues. We understand, like, it's not as smooth as it could be. So I apologize for any people that I wasn't able to answer. You can always sign in next time and ask the same question. So, but I appreciate you guys being here, whoever it is.
And putting up with some of our learning curve.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
All right.
Let's see if I can sign out like a normal person.
All right.
And a normal podcast. All right. Hey, guys, have a nice night. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. We'll see you soon.